Chapter 514. With the occurrence of this scene, the atmosphere quietly quieted down. Originally, the happiest one was Jian, and the contradiction was completely stirred up by Jian. Now that Jian was no longer looking for trouble, everyone was naturally very quiet. Bailey Hongzhuang put all the treasures sent by the cultivators of Jijia into her Qingquan bag with a clear conscience. Jijia was such a behemoth. In her eyes, it was equivalent to a rich, fat sheep, and it would be a waste not to slaughter it. Di Beiqian walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and sat down, quietly giving a thumbs up. Wifey, this move is really wonderful. Bailey Hongzhuang raised an eyebrow and pretended to be puzzled as she looked at Di Beiqian. I didn't do anything. Hearing this, Di Beiqian's lips evoked an evil smile. His wifey was really a little fox. He was quite familiar with his wifey's means. No matter when or where, his wifey would never suffer a loss. The next moment, Di Beiqian's handsome eyes were filled with seriousness and concern. Wifey, you just helped Ji detoxify. How are you feeling? Di Beiqian took out a medicinal pill and put it into Bailey Hongzhuang's mouth. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head, indicating that she was fine, and said, "Don't worry, I have no problem." However, Di Beiqian stubbornly wanted to feed Bailey Hongzhuang. We will enter the monument later. How can I rest assured with you like this? Looking at the concern and distress in Di Beiqian's eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was filled with warmth, and her eyes could not help but be filled with a gentle light. For Di Beiqian, she had always been hesitant. First, it was because of the disparity between their identities. Regardless of who she was in her previous life, in this life, she was just an ordinary young lady of the general's mansion. What's more, she was also burdened with inexplicable hatred. Secondly, it was because she had saved Di Beiqian. Perhaps Di Beiqian was just grateful to her, so he had been taking care of her. However, under Di Beiqian's successive actions, her resolute heart gradually melted. Even though Di Beiqian hadn't clearly told her his inner thoughts, she felt that if Di Beiqian was always by her side like this, she would also feel happy. It felt good to have someone who cared about him like this. Di Beiqian saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was silent. He looked up and saw the spring water in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. His heart skipped a beat, and his lips curled into a knowing smile. He really felt that it was worth it to have such progress with his wife during this trip to the ruins. Don't worry, I'm just pretending to be pale. In reality, I'm not injured. Bailey Hongzhuang said gently, "You should keep your elixir well. Use it when you need it." Di Beiqian was slightly startled. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's complexion gradually improve, he began to believe Bailey Hongzhuang's words. He sighed in his heart. It seemed that he had underestimated his wife's methods. Not far away, Han Shilling saw Di Beiqian and Bailey Hongzhuang's intimate behavior. A vicious jealousy slowly formed in his eyes, and his hands under his sleeves clenched into fists. She had never seen Big Brother D show such tenderness to anyone until Bailey Hongzhuang appeared. That tenderness was something she had dreamed of countless times in the middle of the night. However, Big Brother D did indeed have such tenderness, but it was given to another woman. No, that tenderness should belong to her. Chapter 515. The enchantment is gradually disappearing. There was an exclamation, and everyone's eyes were immediately locked on the ruins. The enchantment, which was originally shining with colorful light, gradually dissipated like melting snow, and there was no longer any obstruction between the crowd and the ruins. The white ruins were magnificent, and a tall and heavy white jade door appeared in front of everyone. In the face of such a behemoth, everyone's heart was filled with a sense of awe. As a junior, when facing the inheritance left by the seniors, they were always in awe and yearning for it. The enchantment has disappeared. We can enter. Lu Huayan's voice was full of excitement, and his breathing became rapid. Everyone nodded, and their eyes flashed with rich and shining light. They had long been envious of the treasures in the ruins. The moment the enchantment disappeared, the four great families in Tiangang sect had already begun to move and rush to the ruins without hesitation. The treasures inside were all ownerless, and first come, first serve. If they were late, they could only snatch them from the hands of others. Wife, you must be careful after entering. If possible, you must follow closely behind me. Bachan's face was full of dignified color, and he looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang, his eyes overflowing with worry. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I understand. Well, then let's go in. Bachan nodded heavily, and immediately took Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and rushed toward the door. Lu Huayan and the others no longer hesitated and rushed toward the door. Only Lu Qinyue stayed in place. She had already made a decision. Even if this place was full of envious treasures, the most important thing was still to save her own life. Brother Gong, I will wait for you at Kanglan College. You must come back safely. Lu Qinyue looked at Gong Shaoqing's back and couldn't help but shout. Her clear eyes were faintly filled with tears. She was worried that if she went back first, she would never see Gong Shaoqing again. I will. Gong Shaoqing responded, but did not look back. Ding, ding, ding. Just as everyone pushed open the heavy door, countless sharp arrows flew out from inside. Some of the cultivators who were caught off guard were directly hit by these arrows and lost their lives. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bachan had set off a little later than everyone else, so they stopped when they saw the arrow attack. Sure enough, there are many traps in the ruins. We've only just opened the door, and someone has already died. Bailey Hongzhuang's words were filled with faint emotion. The originally white building had been stained with blood, and the faint smell of blood spread in the air. Bachan's eyes became more and more serious. I'm afraid the dangers in these ruins are even more terrifying than we imagined. In my opinion, it won't be easy to enter the ruins. We don't need to be too anxious. Let's wait for everyone to enter before we go in. His eyes flashed with wisdom. This ruin was so huge, so the passages inside should be connected in all directions. Even if he entered late, he should still be able to get something. Chapter 516. Ding, ding, ding. The sound of gold and iron colliding rang out, and the arrows that flew out of the ruins were all swept down by the tyrannical cultivators. Except for the cultivators who were shot at the beginning, the others were not injured. After all the arrows were fired, the crowd once again walked in, but their speed was undoubtedly much slower than before. It could be seen that they were full of fear of the ruins. However, until the crowd walked into the ruins, there were no other attacks. Boom! The crowd had just walked into the ruins when a low and heavy sound rang out, and the door that was originally open was closed. Everyone was shocked and wanted to open the door again, but found that no matter how hard they tried, the door did not move. For a time, everyone's hearts sank. It seemed that they had no way out. As the door closed, the crowd fell into darkness. The thick darkness shrouded everyone, and it was obvious that they could not see their own fingers. What is this place? Why is it so strange? Yinza frowned. The situation in the ruins was beyond his expectations. I don't know. We can't see the road at all in this darkness. How are we going to go? Xia Jiqing answered. She had long heard that anything could happen in the ancient ruins, but the scene in front of her was also beyond her imagination. Was it just to lock them all here? Suddenly, a golden halo appeared in front of everyone. It was still dark in the halo, but everyone could judge that this halo was the path deep into the ruins. It seems that we have to choose a path to go in. Bachan's voice was slightly heavy. At first glance, these passages were all exactly the same, and there was no difference at all. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Different passages may have different results. For this kind of thing, except for the owner of the ruins, they simply did not know the final answer. Once wrong, they may stay in the ruins forever, never to see the sun again. The cruelty of the ruins had always been famous. Once the inheritance was obtained, the cultivator would have a qualitative change, but once they failed, it would be death. Every time the ruins opened, it was accompanied by the fall of countless lives. Even so, everyone had to come because of the attraction of the inheritance. There are so many passages. Which one should we choose? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed slightly, and her eyes constantly looked at the many passages in front of her, carefully looking for differences, not giving up any clues. Once she chose, she would lose her life, so she could not be careless. Which perverted guy built this ruin? There's no difference at all between this passage and the ruins. Xiaohei couldn't help but complain. It had been observing for a long time. Not to mention the difference. The degree of light was exactly the same. How could it be chosen? It seems that we can only rely on luck. Little White also had a helpless look on his face. People with good brains were most afraid of encountering a choice that relied purely on luck. After everyone was silent for a moment, some cultivators who did not want to continue waiting, they directly chose a passage and walked into it. Forget it, let's go in first. As soon as he finished speaking, a cultivator had already walked into the nearest passage in front of him. Chapter 517. Huang Fu Hui. Are you going or not? Yinling Xian looked at Huang Fu Hui, who was still puzzled, and asked. In the blink of an eye, most of the cultivators had left, and after these people went in, there was no news. Almost every passage had cultivators entering it. He had observed patiently for a long time and did not find any problems with these passages. He really could not continue to wait. Listening to Yinling Xian's question, Huang Fu Hui's face was also a bit helpless. I can't find any difference. I'll go too. Lin Yiro nodded, and there was a flash of determination on her pretty face. I'll go with you. Life and death have their own destiny. I believe my life will not be bad. Where her voice fell, Lin Yiro did not hesitate to walk into the passage in front of her, looking firm and determined. Seeing Lin Yiro so decisive, Yinling Xian and Huang Fu Hui looked at each other and walked into the passage they had already identified. Jian no longer delayed after seeing everyone's actions. Now, when she saw Bailey Hongzhuang, she felt embarrassed. It was better to make a choice early. Hongzhuang, in my opinion, we can only choose randomly. Xiaoji Qing's face flashed a bit of helplessness. At this point, it was useless to continue to hesitate. Since it was a matter of luck, they would choose randomly. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, and there was also a flash of determination in her eyes. Yes, just choose randomly. The situation may not be what we think. Xiaoji Qing took the lead, and Gong Xiaoqing and others also walked into the passage. For a while, only Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beiqian, and Han Shilling were left. Han Shilling went directly to Di Beiqian's side. His elegant and beautiful face did not hide his intimacy and dependence on Di Beiqian. Big Brother Di, which passage do you choose? I'll go with you. Han Shilling asked aloud. Di Beiqian's face changed for a moment, but soon returned to normal. Obviously, he did not think that Han Shilling would ask to go with him. However, on second thought, he felt that it was very normal. After all, the two of them had trained together before. Master, it looks like this Han Shilling is planning to pester Di Beiqian. Xiaohei's face was filled with disgust and dissatisfaction. It hated this kind of white lotus the most. Their hearts were obviously black, but they still pretended to be kind and understanding on the surface. Just looking at it made it feel disgusted. This problem can't be solved in a short period of time, but she will disappear before my eyes sooner or later. Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferent. She didn't care about Han Shilling following her. Since she was willing to follow, then let her follow. Han Shilling and Di Beiqian had been together for so many years. Di Beiqian never had her in his heart, so what was there for her to worry about? Xiaohei, Xiaobai, and Baisher's eyes flashed with confusion. They did not understand what their master was thinking. Logically speaking, with such an annoying fellow like Han Shilling following them, nothing good would come out of it. Could it be that their master was not worried at all? Wife, which passage do you want to choose? Di Beiqian looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with eyes full of tenderness. Whichever passage his wife chose, he would follow. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang swept her gaze across all the passages and finally looked at the leftmost passage. I choose that one. Chapter 518. In fact, this was not only what Bailey Hongzhuang thought, but she found that when she pointed to the passage, the chaos ring trembled slightly. This was the first time since she had the chaos ring. The chaos ring had shown her the way. Previously, she had been testing it. She found that when she pointed to these passages, the chaos ring sometimes did not move. Sometimes it would tremble, and the trembling was different. Among them, This passage had the biggest fluctuation. Therefore, she did not hesitate to choose this passage. Di Beichun glanced at the passage and nodded. Whichever passage my wife chooses, we will go. However, just as Di Beichun was about to move, Han Shilling suddenly pulled Di Beichun's sleeve and said, "Brother Di, I don't think that passage is good. Let's choose the middle one." With Han Shilling's words, the atmosphere stagnated. It undoubtedly gave Di Beichun two choices. Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferent and said, "Then I will go in first." At this moment, she did not have the mind to compete with Han Shilling for this meaningless sovereignty. The others had already started to move, and she could not continue to delay. Her voice fell. Bailey Hongzhuang no longer hesitated and went directly to the leftmost passage. Han Shilling saw that Bailey Hongzhuang did not argue and left directly. A touch of pride flashed in his eyes, and then he said, "Brother Di." However, without waiting for Han Shilling to finish his words, Di Beichun directly interrupted him and said, "Shilling, since you think this passage is right, you can go. With your strength, there should not be a problem. I will go first." Di Beichun did not hesitate to walk in the direction of Bailey Hongzhuang. He had already said that he would not let Bailey Hongzhuang go alone. He was also very clear about Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude of leaving directly. He and Bailey Hongzhuang had been together for a long time. He understood the pride in her heart very well. The appearance of Shilling had caused her dissatisfaction. With his wife's arrogance, she wouldn't fight over this kind of pointless question. He should really solve this problem completely. Seeing Di Beichun leave without hesitation, Han Shilling's face was extremely ugly. In the past, Di Beichun had never treated her with such an attitude. Leaving directly was equivalent to not giving her any face. In just 3 years, Brother Di had changed so much. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the passage, Di Beichun held her hand again. "Wife, in the future, you can't leave your husband alone." Di Beichun's slightly teasing but serious words passed into Bailey Hongzhuang's ears, and her hand was wrapped in warmth. Bailey Hongzhuang looked over and saw Di Beichun's smiling and doting handsome face. It was so close, so warm. In the end, he did not hesitate to choose to follow her footsteps. Bailey Hongzhuang's mouth slowly overflowed with a smile. She understood that the reason why Di Beichun treated Han Shilling like that was because he and Han Shilling had known each other for many years. Now, Di Beichun's attitude had clearly shown his attitude. He had no other feelings for Han Shilling except for their many years of acquaintance. Bailey Hongzhuang held Di Beichun's hand back. Her smile was clear and charming. Let's go. Chapter 519. As Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun walked into the passage, they found that there was still endless darkness in front of them. Their feet stepped on the ground, but no matter how fast they sped up, there was still endless darkness in front of them, as if they couldn't see the end. What kind of passage is this? It's really too strange. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. They had walked for so long. Logically speaking, even if the ruins were huge, they should have already reached the end. It seems that there's no danger in this passage. It's just a test of whether we can find the exit. Di Beichun said in a low voice, his eyes constantly looking around the passage. Needless to say, he had already guessed that they wouldn't be able to reach the exit if they kept walking like this, because there were places that they hadn't noticed before. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. She was relieved that there was no danger in the passage. At least she didn't need to worry about her life. If I'm not wrong, what we see in front of us should be an illusion. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was firm and confident. She had seen illusions before, but every cultivator's illusions were different. The illusion in front of them was a darkness that made people despair. Illusion. Di Beichun raised his voice. There was some doubt and astonishment between his brows. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Illusions are created by cultivators using a special method. Cultivators don't know when they fall into it. Maybe to others, we're just walking in the same place. We've already seen the size of the ruins outside. It's impossible that we can't get out after so long. Therefore, illusions are the only reason. There's actually such a special method in the world. I've never heard of it. Di Beichun sighed. His wife really knew a lot of things. However, after thinking about it carefully, he felt that his wife's words were very reasonable. Seeing that Di Beichen had never heard of illusions, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be startled. In the era she lived in, illusions were a method that many cultivators had mastered. However, everyone was proficient in different things. Some cultivators could set up very poor illusions that were not enough to confuse people. There were also some cultivators who were so skilled that they could trap people to death without them knowing. With Di Beichen's status, it was impossible for him to not have heard of illusions. However, Di Beichen's serious expression didn't seem fake at all. Could it be that, after 1,000 years, illusions had disappeared from the Shengxian continent? Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking, Di Beichen's words confirmed her guess. Wife, you know a lot of things. Even I can't compare to you. Di Beichen originally thought that he knew a lot of things, but compared to Hongzhuang, he found that he didn't know as much as his wife. Whether it was the vibrating needle technique, the channel opening pill, or even the illusory realm, he had never understood them before. Yet, Bailey Hongzhuang was able to grasp them all. This wasn't an ordinary feat, however, just who was his wife. Why did she know so many lost things that others didn't know about? Thinking of this, Di Beichen couldn't help but tighten his grip on Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. Bailey Hongzhuang gave him the feeling that she was too ethereal, making him unable to grasp her. Chapter 520. Bailey Hongzhuang tightened her grip on Di Beichen's hand when she sensed Di Beichen's fluctuating emotions. She did not care too much about keeping her identity a secret. However, no one would believe her even if she told them about her transmigration. She did not want to add to the trouble. If she and Di Beichen were to reach the stage of mutual understanding in the future, perhaps she would honestly tell Di Beichen about this. However, for now, it was better for her to push all the blame onto her groundless master. Let's observe the subtle differences around us. As long as it's an illusion, there will be flaws. It's just that these flaws are hard to find. Di Beichen nodded when he heard this. He did not let go of Bailey Hongzhuang's hand as he carefully observed everything around them. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi were not idling around either. They all helped Bailey Hongzhuang to find the flaws in this illusion. I'm drunk too. There's nothing but darkness here. Where are we supposed to find the flaws? Xiao He could not help but sigh after she had almost blinded herself. She really could not find any flaws here. Just which pervert designed such an illusion? Little White was speechless for a while. Finding a flaw in this kind of place was simply a joke. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao He were trapped in the tunnel, the other cultivators were in a worse situation than them. Just like the ripples from the chaos ring, the cultivators who had walked into the unresponsive tunnels had all died. The smell of blood gradually wafted into the air. Meanwhile, traps had appeared in the tunnels with less ripples. These traps had a certain degree of danger. However, as long as one's reaction was fast enough, it was not difficult to avoid these traps. Out of all the tunnels, only Bailey Hongzhuang's tunnel was not dangerous at all. Bailey Hongzhuang stopped in her tracks. Since she had confirmed the situation before her, there was no need for her to continue walking. Where exactly is the flaw? Bailey Hongzhuang kept thinking as she squatted on the ground, studying the differences in the ground. However, no matter how much she observed, she couldn't find any problems. There doesn't seem to be any problem here. Wife, could it be that this is an illusion? Di Beichen asked. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and shook her head. No, this must be an illusion. Since we can only go forward and backward, let's try going left and right. Bailey Hongzhuang had a firm look in her eyes. In the past, she had a certain understanding of illusions. Usually, she could achieve the effect she wanted in such a situation as long as she did the opposite. Left and right? Di Beichen was a little confused. He didn't understand what Bailey Hongzhuang meant. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. This is the characteristic of an illusion. Let's try it first. If it succeeds, I'll explain it to you. Okay. Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and stared at Di Beichen. Now close your eyes. In your mind, just firmly think that everything in front of you is fake. Don't doubt it. Then, walk towards me. Walk towards this wall. Don't hesitate. Okay. Di Beichen answered without hesitation. He had always believed in Bailey Hongzhuang's words. Chapter 521. In the next moment, Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang slammed into the walls on both sides without hesitation. Seeing this scene, Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Baisher could not help but cover their eyes. It was too cruel. If the result was not what their master expected, then their master and Di Beichen would be unlucky. Bang! A loud noise exploded in Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's ears. The two only felt that they had slammed into something, but the expected pain did not come. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly opened her eyes, only to see Di Beichen looking at her with a smile. The darkness in front of them had disappeared at some point, and it was replaced by a bright light. "Wife, we did it!" Di Beichen could not hide the amazement in his eyes. He was now really convinced by his wife's wisdom. He did not understand the illusion at all. If his wife had not thought of the flaw of the illusion, he was afraid that he would have wasted a lot of time in the passage. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. It seemed that her prediction was right. In their line of sight, the passages that led in all directions were intricate and complicated. Closed stone rooms appeared on both sides of the passage, and some treasures were placed in these stone rooms. The two turned their heads to look, only to find that all the darkness they had seen before was fake, and the endless passage was only a short path of about 10 meters. However, they also saw many cultivators who were constantly walking in place, their faces full of confusion, just like the expressions of the two of them. On some other paths, there were also many corpses. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes could not help but fall on the chaos ring on her hand. If it had not been for the chaos ring guiding her, she would not have been able to get out of this predicament so easily. Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang saw Xia Jiqing, who was still rushing on the other side, and could not help but shout, "Jiqing! Jiqing, did you hear that?" However, no matter how Bailey Hongzhuang shouted, Xia Jiqing still walked with a blank face. Obviously, she couldn't hear Bailey Hongzhuang's words. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang also felt a little helpless. Fortunately, the path that Jiqing and the others had chosen was not a dead end, which made her feel a lot more at ease. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Di Beichen and said, "Forget it. Let's set off first." "All right." Di Beichen nodded and immediately walked forward with Bailey Hongzhuang. Bang! As one of the stone rooms was opened, countless smoke and dust surged out. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were surprised to find that there were many martial skills placed here. The level of the martial skills was not high. Most of them were yellow rank martial skills, but they could still be auctioned for a high price. As Bailey Hongzhuang picked up a martial skill book, she was surprised to find that the martial skill had directly turned into powder and drifted to the ground. It seems that these martial skills have been here for too long. The paper has turned into flying ash. Di Beichen said regretfully. Martial skills were the essence left behind by many cultivators. It was a pity that they disappeared with time. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and no longer delayed. It seems that these papers can't be kept. Let's go to the back. Okay, Di Beichen agreed. From the degree of change of these papers, it seems that this ruin is at least a few hundred years old. Chapter 5:22. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang walked forward and opened all the stone rooms along the way. Some of the things inside had already become useless as time passed. However, when the two of them left, they still helped to close the door of the stone room to delay as much time as possible. Although the existence of the illusion would trap everyone for a period of time, they believed that after a period of time, everyone would understand the key to it. This ruin has been sealed for too long. Other than the inheritance left behind by the owner of the ruin, I'm afraid there aren't many things that are useful. After looking through a few stone rooms, Di Beichen's eyes flashed with wisdom. It was actually not a good thing that the ruin had been sealed for too long. Too many resources had become meaningless as time passed, and the things that they could obtain were also very few. For example, just now they saw a small arsenal. However, the weapons inside had been oxidized and turned into scraps as time passed. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. After being buried for so long, anything that can be left behind must be a treasure. To them, ordinary weapons and martial skills were not very useful. They could only be sold for money. Although money was important, they did not lack it for the time being. Therefore, it did not matter if they did not have it. As the two of them walked forward, they directly skipped a few stone rooms. Most of the treasures in the stone rooms in front of them were not very valuable. It was better to go straight to the important places. When Bailey Hongzhuang came to the door of a stone room, her clear eyes were filled with some doubts. The door of this stone room seemed to be slightly different from the stone room door she had seen before. The thick white stone door was a little bigger than the other stone doors. She immediately wanted to open it, but when she pushed, she found that the stone door could not be pushed open at all. Seeing this, Di Beichen's yuan power surged, and he directly punched the stone door. Bang! Fragments fell to the ground, but the stone door still did not move at all. This stone room does seem to be different. Di Beichen's handsome eyes narrowed and fixed his gaze on the stone door. Master, I can sense energy fluctuations here, Xiao He said to Bailey Hongzhuang excitedly as her eyes shone with excitement. Hearing Xiao He's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes also brightened. They had not found anything even until now. Perhaps what lay behind this stone door was their reward. What kind of energy fluctuation can you feel? Bailey Hongzhuang asked as she searched for a way to open the stone door. Xiao Bai shook her head. I don't know. I can only be sure that the energy behind the stone door is very strong. There should be some treasure. Wife, the door to this stone room can't be opened. There must be some other mystery. Di Beichen's voice was somewhat solemn, his eyes constantly looking around the stone room. With his premonition, the value of the things here was definitely higher than the things in the stone room. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently. There must be some kind of mechanism near this stone door. We can only open it if we find the mechanism. In the next moment, Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang looked at each other. Immediately, they stopped hesitating and began to search for the mechanism on both sides of the stone door. Bailey Hongzhuang touched both sides of the stone door with her bare hands. The flat walls were abnormally smooth, without any protrusions. Chapter 5:23. Knock, knock. Bailey Hongzhuang gently knocked on the wall and listened to the differences in the sounds on the wall. The mechanism should be near the stone door, so they had to be careful and not miss any minute differences. Di Beichen's extraordinarily handsome face was also filled with seriousness. He pressed his ear against the wall and listened carefully to the differences in the sounds. This seemed simple, but facing such a wide wall, it required a lot of patience. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were continuously knocking on the wall to find the mechanism, the cultivators' voices gradually came from behind them. I didn't expect the first trial to be so strange. If I hadn't walked in despair and hit the wall directly, I wouldn't have been able to come out. Haha, your ability to hit the wall by accident is really extraordinary. I heard you say that there was suddenly no sound after hitting the wall, so I gave it a try. I didn't expect to come out like this. I don't know when the rest of the idiots will come out. The two of us have grasped a great opportunity. From the conversation between the two, one could clearly feel their excitement. In such a time of a race against time, this kind of opportunity was hard to come by. Damn, it can't be. This method actually works. Xiao He was speechless. It had thought that these two fellows were very clever. It didn't expect them to use such a lucky method. It was simply blinding. This world is really full of endless possibilities. It's impossible not to believe it. Xiao Bai shook its head slightly. If the owner of the ruins knew that these two had used such a method to walk out of the illusion, who knew how he would feel? Master, all the best. Baisher's face was filled with worry. The two cultivators would arrive at Master's place soon. They had to speed up. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen also sped up. They had to open the stone door before the others arrived. Otherwise, a fight would be unavoidable. Baisher also used its small claws to continuously knock on the wall, wanting to help Bailey Hongzhuang find the mechanism as soon as possible. Di Beichen noticed Baisher's actions, and a look of surprise surfaced in his eyes. There is no need to mention the intelligence of a beast king, but it was not easy to make a beast king willingly obey his orders. Judging from the beast king's current attitude, it was getting along well with Hongzhuang, so there was no need for him to worry. As the footsteps behind her got closer and closer, Bailey Hongzhuang's movements became faster and faster. Look, isn't that Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang? I didn't expect them to come out earlier than us. The two men in the back finally saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. Their eyes lit up. So far, the two of them had not gained anything. Perhaps Bailey Hongzhuang had already taken all the treasures. Quick, catch up to them. The two men's minds moved, and they quickly rushed towards the place where Bailey Hongzhuang and Bailey Hongzhuang were. There's no time. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. The switch was hidden too well. After searching for a long time, they could not find any movement. Gotcha! A soft sound was heard. Bailey Hongzhuang realized that the stone door that had been tightly shut had suddenly opened. Chapter 524. White Lion waved its two little paws and looked at the two of them with a smug expression. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were speechless when they saw the position that White Lion had pressed. The way the owner of the ruins thought was indeed different from ordinary people. The mechanism was actually set at White Lion's height. They had to squat down to touch it. That's enough. Xiao He was speechless. It finally understood that the things that the owner of the ruins had set up were all in places that no one else would have expected. Rumble. The door to the stone chamber opened with a loud bang. As it had not been opened for many years, there was a clacking sound when it opened again. Smoke and dust filled the air. One could imagine the smoke and dust that had accumulated over hundreds of years. It directly covered Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's eyes. The stone chamber's door has been opened. Quick, catch up to them. The two people behind them were nervous when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and White Lion open the stone chamber's door. The treasures in the ruins were all incredible treasures. They had to snatch them away. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun rushed in almost as soon as the stone chamber's door opened. White Lion also jumped onto Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder. In the blink of an eye, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun disappeared from the sight of the two people behind them. As soon as they entered the stone chamber, Bailey Hongzhuang was about to close the stone chamber's door. Just like when they had first entered the ruins, the stone chamber's door had automatically closed. By the time the two cultivators rushed up, the stone chamber's door had closed. Their heads hit the stone chamber's door, and their noses were covered in dust. Bang, bang, bang. The two people behind them kept knocking on the door. However, the door did not show any signs of opening. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun then looked at the scene in the stone chamber. However, they were both stunned. In front of the two of them, countless specks of green light were floating in the stone room. They were sparkling and translucent, looking very pleasing to the eye. How is this possible? Bailey Hongzhuang was shocked by the scene in front of her. The stone room, with a radius of a few hundred square meters, was filled with balls of green light. If one took a closer look, one would discover that a green fruit was wrapped within the green light. It looked like a green apple, but it was not an actual fruit. Instead, it was an imitation of energy. Even with her knowledge of ruins, she had to admit that this ruin was indeed a big deal. Di Beichun's eyes were fixed on these floating green fruits, and his handsome eyes were filled with shock. These shouldn't be elemental energy fruit, right? The elemental force fruit was formed from the condensation of elemental energy. It was not a real fruit, but was made from the cultivator's own elemental energy. The elemental energy fruit was extremely useful to cultivators. Absorbing the elemental energy fruit could directly enhance one's strength. However, very few cultivators would use their own elemental energy to produce elemental energy. Usually, only the elders would do so to help the younger generation improve their strength. After all, it was a waste of strength and elemental energy. It was really not cost-effective. However, there were so many elemental energy fruits in this stone chamber. For Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, it was tantamount to finding a big treasure. With so many elemental energy fruits, our strength must be improved a lot. Chapter 525. With a confident smile on his handsome face, Di Beichun stared at Bailey Hongzhuang beside him. These Yuanli fruits are very helpful to you. You can practice here first. I'll see if there's any way to stop others from entering. Yuanli fruit was a very special substance. It could not be put into the Qingquan bag and could only be absorbed immediately. With Bailey Hongzhuang's current state, absorbing these Yuanli fruits was the most suitable. He knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation talent was not inferior to other aristocratic families' children. It was just that she had wasted too much time in the general's mansion before. With the help of these Yuanli fruits, Bailey Hongzhuang could quickly catch up with her cultivation, which would save her a lot of trouble in the future. Listening to Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised and touched at the same time. If it were an ordinary person, they would not be able to resist the temptation of these Yuanli fruits. Even a number of lovers who broke up for Yuanli fruits was definitely not a small number. However, Di Beichen could choose to give these Yuanli fruits to her without hesitation. It could be seen that Di Beichen cared about her. There are so many Yuanli fruits here that I can't absorb them all by myself. It's better for us to practice here first. Bailey Hongzhuang said. Since they could not take the Yuanli fruits away, they had no other way. The only way was to absorb them into their bodies as quickly as possible. After all, it was impossible for them to give up and leave directly for such a treasure. Well, you practice first. I'll observe this stone door first. Di Beichen nodded slightly and showed a gentle smile to Bailey Hongzhuang. Then he began to study the stone door. Outside the stone door, the other two people were constantly bombarding the stone door. You guys, open the stone door quickly. Bang, bang, bang. The stone door was under constant attack, but it remained solid and showed no signs of breaking. This made Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen feel a little relieved. Subsequently, the two people outside the door began to search for the mechanism to open the stone door. However, their situation wasn't much better than Bailey Hongzhuang and Lin Sanjiu's. Gulp! Baishur grabbed an elemental energy fruit floating in front of him and stuffed it into his mouth. Feeling the abundant elemental energy in his body, Baishur could not help but lick his lips. Stars appeared in his eyes as he waved his hands continuously, trying to grab more elemental energy. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were also hugging an elemental energy fruit in each hand. This feeling was simply too great. Master, there seems to be something in the wall on the far right. Xiao Bai reminded. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked towards the place that Xiao Bai had mentioned. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were very powerful and had very sensitive senses. She believed that their judgment would not be wrong. When Bailey Hongzhuang walked to the back wall, she suddenly realized that there was a faint bulge in the middle of the wall. She stretched out her hand and patted it. Only then did she realize that it was caused by a large amount of dust covering it. After she patted the dust off, she realized that there was a rectangular groove in the middle of the wall. A box made of black iron was placed in the groove, exuding an ancient aura. Di Beichen was a little surprised when he saw the box that Bailey Hongzhuang discovered. He immediately walked towards Bailey Hongzhuang. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang took the box out of the groove. Chapter 5:26. Boom! A dull sound rang out. A stone door suddenly appeared between Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, separating the two of them. Upon discovering this, Di Beichen immediately rushed towards Bailey Hongzhuang. Unfortunately, the stone door descended even faster and blocked Di Beichen's approach. Di Beichen's handsome face quickly filled with worry. My wife, are you all right? However, no matter how much Di Beichen shouted, Bailey Hongzhuang did not respond. Damn it! Di Beichen's eyes were filled with anxiety. The appearance of this stone door was simply too unexpected and had completely exceeded his expectations. Vigorous primary energy swept out from Di Beichen's body and slammed heavily against the stone door. However, this thick and heavy stone door did not budge, as if it was made of steel. What kind of stone door is this? Even the usually indolent and indifferent Di Beichen could not help but feel angry at this moment. If his wife was in danger because of this, he would really regret it to death. Di Beichen. Bailey Hongzhuang also shouted after the stone door had closed. However, her voice did not receive any response. It seems that this stone room has completely isolated all sound, Xiao Bai said. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. That should be the case. This kind of situation would indeed occur in some stone rooms. Judging from the thickness of this stone door, it was not much different from the stone door that they had opened previously. It was clearly impossible to break it apart. Xiao He and Xiao Bai quickly enlarged their bodies and led Baisher to search for a mechanism near the stone door. They cannot be trapped here forever. Bailey Hongzhuang, on the other hand, was taking things as they came. She examined the box in her hand. It was precisely because she had picked up the box that she had triggered the mechanism. However, she couldn't find any mechanism in the groove, even after checking it for a long time. It was really strange. His gaze fell on the black iron box in his hand. Even after hundreds of years, the box was still as bright as new, without any signs of damage from the passage of time. Her clear eyes were filled with curiosity. She was really curious about what was inside the box. However, a small lock locked the box. No matter how hard she tried, the black iron box could not be opened. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but sigh helplessly. She had finally found a treasure, yet she couldn't open it. One could imagine the depression in her heart. "Master, we've searched. There aren't any traps nearby." Xiao He rolled to Bailey Hongzhuang's side in defeat. What kind of ruin was this? Everything that had appeared so far made her speechless. White Lion felt a little helpless. This time, it really couldn't find the switch. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and looked at the three helpless fellows in front of her. She said, "Since the master of this ruin has trapped us here, he must have a way to get out. At most, we'll just have to spend a little more time." She believed that the heavens would always leave a way out. The master of this ruin had created this ruin for no other reason than to choose a qualified successor. Based on a number of elemental energy fruits in this stone room, one could tell that this was a gift from the master of this ruin to the younger generation. He would never leave so many elemental energy fruits to someone who was about to die. Hence, the stone room they were in must be a way out and not a way out. Chapter 5:27. There are so many elemental energy fruits here. In my opinion, we'd better improve our cultivation here first. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with wisdom and determination. Since these elemental energy fruits could not be taken away, it was better to absorb them here first. Now, the most important thing was to improve her strength. Originally, she had not been cultivating for a long time. It was already considered good that her strength had reached such a level. However, when she gathered with these aristocratic children this time, her strength became her shortcoming. All along, Bailey Hongzhuang had been most proud of her strength. She had never thought that her strength would be suppressed everywhere after she had transmigrated. Although she had never said it out loud, only she knew the depression in her heart. Han Schilling was definitely not an easy person to deal with. After leaving the remains, the situation she would have to face would be more dangerous. Therefore, she had to improve her strength as soon as possible. Now, these elemental energy fruits were the best way for her to improve her strength as soon as possible. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the three beasts nodded together. Improving their strength was indeed the most important thing now. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately calmed down. She grabbed the elemental energy fruit floating in front of her with one hand and swallowed it without hesitation. Her strength was already on the verge of a breakthrough. It was only because the previous situation was not suitable for a breakthrough that she suppressed it and did not break through. Now that there was such a rare and quiet environment, it was a good time to break through. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had started to break through, the three beasts dutifully guarded by Bailey Hongzhuang's side, guarding against the sudden appearance of others who would disturb their master's breakthrough. Time passed slowly, and the elemental energy fruits in the stone room gradually decreased. While Bailey Hongzhuang was concentrating on cultivating, Baisher also took the demon crystal of the Qing Tian Mo crocodile. After that, he lay beside Bailey Hongzhuang and also began to break through. It has been a few days. Master and Baisher are still cultivating in seclusion. I don't know when they will wake up. Xiao He rolled on the ground in boredom. It was really boring. There are not many elemental energy fruits here. I believe it won't be long before Master wakes up. Xiao Bai helplessly looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, who was like an old monk. Master had been in this position for a long time. However, during this time, Master's strength has improved at an amazing speed. Haha. With that said, Xiao He suddenly became excited again. The effect of elemental energy fruits was not to be underestimated. With the help of so many elemental energy fruits, Master's strength had been able to break through all the way to catch up with Ji Yun'er's pace. She believed that once her master exited his cultivation state, she would be able to catch up with the cultivation that she had lagged behind. Boom! Just when Xiao He and Xiao Bai were thinking, with Bailey Hongzhuang as the center, an amazing attraction force broke out in an instant. The elemental energy fruits floating in the air flew directly towards Bailey Hongzhuang under this attraction force. Seeing this, Xiao He and Xiao Bai could not help but look at each other. There was a deep shock in their eyes. Such a big fluctuation, is it possible that Master is going to directly break through to the Xiantian realm? As everyone knew, on the road of cultivation, only when one entered the Xiantian realm could one truly enter the world of cultivation. Chapter 528. Previously, the speed of their master's promotion to the middle stage of Mysterious Ian was already very fast. They did not expect that with the help of this Yuanli fruit, she would directly begin to break through to the innate realm. Once this kind of cultivation speed was spread out, it was not known how many people would be shocked. Their trip to the monument was really worth it. Too powerful. That Jin is only at the second stage of the Red Realm, and she's a little older than the master. Xiao He raised her eyebrows. Her eyes were full of pride. Previously, Ji Yun wanted to take advantage of her strength to harm their master. They did not expect that in such a short time, their master would also break through to the Red Realm. They did not know what kind of expression Ji Yun would have when she found out. Hey, why are all the Yuanli fruits absorbed by the master? But this Yuanli fruit is still floating here. Xiao Bai's gaze fell on the only Yuanli fruit floating in the stone room. The performance of this Yuanli fruit was too unusual. Listening to Xiao Bai's words, Xiao He also looked at the Yuanli fruit in midair, her eyes full of astonishment. Is it possible that this Yuanli fruit is hiding something? Xiao He and Xiao Bai looked at each other, and their eyes lit up with interest. The next moment, the two fur balls flew out and rushed toward the elemental energy fruit without hesitation. However, the Yuanli fruit seemed to have a spirit of its own and quickly avoided the attacks of the two fur balls. Seeing this, the two fur balls were even more certain that there was something fishy about this Yuanli fruit. All the previous Yuanli fruits were very easy to catch, but this Yuanli fruit was like a loach, impossible to catch at all. If their master had not absorbed all the Yuanli fruits, they would not have discovered that there was such a special Yuanli fruit. Maybe the way to leave this stone room is in this Yuanli fruit. Xiao He's imagination was running wild. During the time when their master was in retreat, they had searched every corner of the stone room, and there was no mechanism at all. It seemed that this Yuanli fruit that was constantly running away was probably the way to leave the stone room. At the thought of this, Xiao He and Xiao Bai were filled with boundless motivation. They did not believe that they could not catch a mere elemental energy fruit. Then, a chase broke out in the stone room. Two figures, one black and one white, were constantly chasing the green Yuanli fruit. The three figures were as fast as lightning. This time, the two fur balls discovered that the speed of the elemental energy fruit was not to be underestimated. Even under their combined pursuit, the elemental energy fruit still had the strength to escape. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were even more infuriated. They immediately went all out against the elemental energy fruit. It was rare for the black-white double fiends to make a move. If they couldn't even catch a single elemental energy fruit, then they wouldn't have the face to see anyone. When Bailey Hongzhuang successfully broke through to the Xiantian realm and opened her eyes, she saw the two fluff balls lying on the ground, gasping for breath. Their appearance was as if they had just fought a big battle with someone else. Her clear eyes quietly filled with a trace of surprise. Bailey Hongzhuang was a little puzzled. In this stone room, there was no one else except her and the three beasts. What did these two little guys do? What happened to you two? Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but ask. The two fur balls couldn't have fought with each other, right? Phew! Xiao He sat up, panting, and said, I'm so tired. Chapter 529. What's going on? Bailey Hongzhuang's expression turned serious. Looking at the situation, something must have happened while she was cultivating. After Xiao Hei caught her breath, she walked over to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and handed over a key. Master, this key is for you. Looking at the key in Xiao Hei's hand, her elegant and refined face was filled with astonishment. Where did you find this key? With just one look, Bailey Hongzhuang was certain that this was the key to opening the black iron box. She could not help but feel even more puzzled. This key is inside an elemental energy fruit. As Xiaobai explained what had happened, Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood what had happened. She was even more astonished. The idea of the Master of the Ruins was truly extraordinary. It was indeed difficult to notice the key inside the elemental energy fruit. In addition to everything that had happened before, it was obvious that from the moment she had walked into this stone room, everything that had happened next was under the control of the Master of the Ruins. Everything she had done was arranged by the Master of the Ruins. Only after she had absorbed all the elemental energy fruits would she discover the last elemental energy fruit and obtain the key. Otherwise, she was afraid that she would not be able to find a way to leave even if she turned the entire stone room upside down. How long have I been in closed-door cultivation? Bailey Hongzhuang asked aloud. It must have taken her quite a long time to absorb all the elemental energy fruits. Master has been in closed-door cultivation for half a month. Xiao Hei slowly replied. During this half a month, it and Xiao Hei had been extremely bored. After all, the two of them had been together in the Chaos Ring for a long time. Hearing the hidden bitterness in Xiao Hei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a smile. These two had been trapped in the Chaos Ring for too many years and were most afraid of loneliness. I wonder how Di Beichun is doing. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun. She and Di Beichun were suddenly separated. She believed that Di Beichun must be very worried about her. Half a month was not a short time in the ruins. He wondered how Jiqing and the others were doing now. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at the black iron box in her hand. She wanted to see what was inside the black iron box. Crack! With a soft sound, Bailey Hongzhuang successfully opened the black iron box in her hand. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw the contents of the box, her deep eyes couldn't help but reveal a trace of amazement. In his line of sight, a sparkling and translucent longsword was quietly placed in the black iron box. The sparkling and translucent longsword seemed to be cast from ice. An icy chill spread from it. It was exquisite and sparkling, giving off a breathtaking feeling. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang had seen many weapons, she still felt that the longsword in front of her was the most enchanting. Among all the swords she had ever seen, this sword was the most impressive. With a slight movement, the tip of the sword flowed with a cold light, faintly revealing a bit of biting, cold, murderous intent. It was both frightening and pleasing at the same time. Wow! Xiao Hei exclaimed, "This sword is so beautiful." It was considered to be experienced and knowledgeable. It had seen all kinds of weapons, but this was the first time it had seen such a sparkling and translucent weapon. Chapter 530. Upon hearing Xiao Bai's words, Bailey Hongzhuang finally noticed that there was a faint blood color circulating on the crystal-clear blade. This blood color was extremely faint. If one did not look closely, they would not have noticed it at all. This sword is probably not an ordinary item. Bailey Hongzhuang's light and pleasant voice was somewhat rueful. She stared at the sharp sword in her hand. From her point of view, this sword was extremely special. Even though it had been placed quietly in the black iron box, she could still feel the sharp and murderous aura emanating from the blade. Obviously, this was a sword that had been stained with blood. Master, you should first drip a drop of blood on this sword to claim ownership of it. Xiao Bai reminded her. Once she walked out of this stone room, there would be countless cultivators eyeing this sword covetously. Why not drip a drop of blood to claim ownership of it first? It would not be easy for others to snatch this sword away from her. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. From the moment she saw this sword, she had already decided on it. It just so happened that she had been lacking a handy weapon. This sword had appeared at the right time. She believed that with this sword, her battle power would increase once again. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang did not hesitate any longer. She immediately cut her finger and dripped a drop of blood on the blade of the sword. When the drop of blood landed on the blade, it did not immediately merge with the blade. Instead, it flowed along a fine mark from the blade to the tip of the sword, forming a thin and long mark. As Bailey Hongzhuang's primary energy and mental power flowed into the sword, the blood began to slowly be absorbed by the sharp sword. As soon as the blood was absorbed, the sharp sword emitted a bright white light, just like the light emitted by the historical remains. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that two beautiful and sharp words slowly appeared on the crystal-clear blade. Color glaze. Color glaze. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at the two words. Obviously, this sword's name was Color Glaze. This sword is so magical. It is indeed not an ordinary item. Xiao He and Xiao Bai's eyes shone with a strange light. It had only revealed its true appearance after it had claimed ownership. This showed how special it was. Congratulations, Master. However, hearing the congratulations of the two fur balls, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. I only left my mark on the glazed sword. I didn't complete the recognition process. Why? Xiao He and Xiao Bai widened their eyes and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in confusion. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up in a helpless arc. There's still a seal on the glazed sword. It won't be easy to break this seal. In my current situation, it's not suitable for me to break the seal. It's better to leave a spiritual imprint first and think of a way after leaving the ruins. Xiao He and Xiao Bai finally understood. It seemed like they had thought too simply. However, it was not a simple matter to make a treasure of a high grade recognize its master, not to mention that Lu Lijian was so special. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly got up and looked at the door of the stone room in front of her. She had been trapped in this stone room for so long. It was time to get out. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was shocked to see that a small door had appeared on the right side of the stone room. Next to this small door was an extremely simple mechanism. Bailey Hongzhuang turned the mechanism with the intention of giving it a try. Crack. Chapter 531. Wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it by chance. This was the inner portrayal of Bailey Hongzhuang and the two beasts. They had been looking for the mechanism for a long time, and now they had opened the stone door so easily, without waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang to walk out of the stone room. A surprised voice came. Hongzhuang, you finally appeared. Such a lively and joyful voice. Who else could it be other than Xia Jiqing? The next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang directly fell into a bear hug. Hongzhuang, I haven't seen you in the monument for so long. I thought something had happened to you. Xia Jiqing's eyes were full of concern. Are you okay? Seeing Xia Jiqing appear, Bailey Hongzhuang was also very happy. She immediately shook her head and said, I'm fine. I'm relieved to see that you're okay. Previously, when she saw Xia Jiqing and others trapped in the illusion, she was very worried. She didn't expect to see Xia Jiqing appear in front of her safe and sound as soon as she walked out of the stone room. Her heart couldn't help but feel a burst of joy. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes couldn't help but look behind her. Previously, Di Beichun was trapped in the stone room like her. She didn't know if Di Beichun had come out. Wifey, are you looking for me? The low and charming voice revealed a little teasing and ambiguity. Di Beichun looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a smile. The dark and bright phoenix eyes quietly flashed a touch of joy, and Bailey Hongzhuang's lips slowly bloomed into a smile. As long as Di Beichun was okay, she was relieved. Hongzhuang, why have you been in there for so long? Xia Jiqing couldn't help but ask. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled helplessly. I was trapped inside and couldn't find a way out for a while. I only managed to get out now. Bailey Hongzhuang replied while paying attention to her surroundings. Only then did she realize that all the cultivators were gathered here. However, the environment in front of her was no longer the same as when she first entered the stone chamber. It was like they were in another place. Why is everyone here? Bailey Hongzhuang was puzzled. Logically speaking, since she had been trapped in the stone room for so long, the treasures in the ruins should have long been collected by everyone. Why were they still gathered here? Alas, Xia Jiqing sighed. I have been here for more than 10 days. I heard everyone say that behind the stone door is the main hall. The most valuable treasures are in the main hall, but this stone door is too strange. It can't be opened at all. You know how rare this ancient monument is. Everyone is naturally unwilling to leave before finding the final inheritance, so everyone gathered here. You are the last one to come. Bailey Hongzhuang understood, and her eyes could not help but fall on the huge stone door in front of her. Compared to the huge stone door in front of her, the place she had come out of was just a very small stone room. This stone door was painted with exquisite and complex patterns. It was beautiful, and looking at it quietly gave people a feeling of cleansing. It was the spirit-severing stage. At the same time, Gong Xiaoqing and the others also walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. The familiar faces flashed with concern and joy. Hongzhuang, fortunately you are okay. Zhang Yinfeng smiled. Everyone was worried to death. Chapter 532. Cui Haoyan smiled and waved his hand. It's just a little injury, nothing serious. Seeing that Cui Haoyan and Zhang Yunfeng's faces were normal, Bailey Hongzhuang also nodded. Judging from a doctor's point of view, Cui Haoyan and Zhang Yunfeng's injuries were not serious. Bailey Hongzhuang, we are relieved that you are okay. Dongfang Yu said slowly. His face was as gentle as a spring breeze with a reassuring smile. During the time when Bailey Hongzhuang disappeared, his heart had never been calm. It wasn't until he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's safe appearance that he was relieved. Fu Hongbo looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. After half a month, he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's mental appearance seemed to have changed. Bailey Hongzhuang, your aura seems to have strengthened a lot. Fu Hongbo's eyes were full of surprise. He felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's aura was much stronger than before. It was no longer the same level. Listening to Fu Hongbo's words, everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. Lu Huayan's eyes flashed with shock. Bailey Hongzhuang, your aura, did you break through to the innate realm? As soon as these words came out, Xia Jiqing and the others were instantly petrified and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with astonishment. What a joke. Hongzhuang had only been gone for half a month. How could she have broken through to the innate realm? Seeing that the two mentors had discovered her changes, Bailey Hongzhuang also smiled and admitted, I just broke through to the first level of the Red Realm. Hiss! Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's admission, Xia Jiqing and the others all took a breath of cold air. They couldn't believe what they had heard. Hongzhuang, what good opportunity did you find in the past half a month? Xia Jiqing couldn't help but ask. Such a fast promotion was really enviable. According to the usual cultivation speed, it would take at least 1 to 2 years to break through to the Xiantian realm. However, Hongzhuang had completed it in just half a month. How could people not be envious? Although Zhang Yinfeng and the others didn't say it directly like Xia Jiqing, the envy in their eyes was very obvious. I was locked in a stone room before. There were many elemental energy fruits in the stone room. I couldn't find a way out, so I could only stay inside and cultivate. It wasn't until I absorbed all the elemental energy fruits that the door of the stone room opened. Only then did everyone understand. In their hearts, they felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was too lucky. Elemental energy fruit was a rare treasure. Bailey Hongzhuang was actually trapped in a place full of elemental energy fruits. Could she be any happier? Why were the stone rooms they had seen before empty? Or the things had been damaged? Bailey Hongzhuang directly entered a room full of elemental energy fruits. And the most important thing was that she was trapped inside. They had also tried to open the stone room, but no matter what method they used, they couldn't open it. It was equivalent to all the elemental energy fruits in the stone room were destined to be eaten by Bailey Hongzhuang alone. After eating, the door of the stone room opened. What good thing did Bailey Hongzhuang do in her last life? This kind of good thing of elemental energy fruits falling from the sky fell on Bailey Hongzhuang's head. Hongzhuang, your luck is too good. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but admire. Chapter 533. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a clear and pleasant smile. She felt that the harvest of this trip was not small. With such an improvement in strength, it would be more convenient for her to do things in the future. After all, with low strength, many things were not very convenient. Cui Haoyin and the others walked to the side with a belly full of envy. Bailey Hongzhuang was the only one with such luck. That's why people say that comparisons are odious. Bailey Hongzhuang was very outstanding, but everyone's living environment was different. This time, they came to the ancient ruins together, and the gap between their characters was still undeniable. Dongfang Yu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a slightly complicated gaze. He was happy, and at the same time somewhat emotional. When he first met Bailey Hongzhuang, he didn't find a gap between them. He didn't expect that after Bailey Hongzhuang stayed in the college for a while, the gap between them became bigger and bigger. Maybe he was just wishful thinking from the beginning. Di Beichen was the one who was really suitable for Bailey Hongzhuang. In just half a month, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength had surpassed his, and Di Beichen was still standing beside Bailey Hongzhuang calmly. Jiqing, did you gain anything in the ruins in the past half-month? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows showed a little curiosity. Since she passed through the illusion, she was locked in the stone room and didn't know anything about what happened after. What made her the happiest was that Jiqing and the others' luck was good. Although they were slightly injured, the problem was not serious, which made her feel relieved. Xia Jiqing shook her head and then sighed again. Alas, the inexplicable road before made me trapped for a long time. If it wasn't for a chance, I wouldn't have been able to get out at all. I now know how powerful the strong are. We have been walking the same place, and it felt so real. After that, when I came out, many cultivators had already come out, so I walked around this place. However, I came out so late. If there were any treasures, they would have long been taken away by others. It was not my turn at all. Xia Jiqing shrugged. The only thing to be thankful for is that I haven't lost my life yet. Hongzhuang, when did you break free from that illusion? That's an illusion. Bailey Hongzhuang explained with a smile. I came out very early, and as soon as I walked into the stone room, I was locked inside. Illusion? Xia Jiqing raised her voice, but after thinking about it, she felt that the name was very consistent with the situation she had seen before. Yes, it's an illusion. I heard from the cultivators of the Yin family that you and Di Beichen were the first to come out. They wanted to catch up with the two of you, but they couldn't. Xia Jiqing covered her mouth and snickered. In my opinion, the cultivators of this family are not as powerful as the rumors say. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood that Xia Jiqing was talking about the people who had chased her in Di Beichen. The background of the family is very strong. What we have now is just the tip of the iceberg, Bailey Hongzhuang reminded. She knew that Xia Jiqing had always been very loyal to her, but she didn't want Xia Jiqing to offend some powerful opponents because of her. Chapter 534. With a faint smile on her beautiful face, Xia Jiqing held Bailey Hongzhuang's hands and said seriously, Hongzhuang, I understand what you mean. Don't worry, I won't take the initiative to offend them. Seeing that Xia Jiqing understood her meaning, Bailey Hongzhuang also showed a gentle smile. That's good. With our current situation, we won't be too anxious with them for the time being. Her dark phoenix eyes were quietly filled with a touch of distance and firmness. Now, they didn't have much interaction, but in the future they would definitely have a lot of interaction. The Lan family, that mysterious and powerful family, she believed that they would meet soon. Hongzhuang, during the time you were locked in the stone room, Di Beichen was worried about you. When we came here before, we saw Di Beichen guarding the door. If there was any movement, he would look inside. Han Shilling also came to ask, but Di Beichen obviously put all his thoughts on you and didn't pay much attention to her. Xia Jiqing winked at Bailey Hongzhuang, her smile revealing a bit of slyness and ridicule. I said that Di Beichen is a good man worthy of being entrusted with a lifetime. My vision is not bad. Looking at Xia Jiqing's proud appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang was also somewhat helpless. This guy was really a clown. You two haven't seen each other for half a month. You must have a lot to say. I won't disturb you here. When her voice fell, Xia Jiqing ignored Bailey Hongzhuang's words and walked to the other side with a smile. She had been here talking to Hongzhuang for so long. Presumably Di Beichen had long been unable to hold back. After Xia Jiqing left, Di Di Beichun slowly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Wifey, have you been well during the time you were in the stone room? The deep eyes like the sea were very complicated, full of concern, heartache, and guilt. As early as before entering the monument, he promised to take care of Bailey Hongzhuang. He didn't think that he would make such a mistake. During this time, he had already felt guilty countless times and regretted it countless times. If his wifey was in danger because of this, he would definitely hate himself. Do you think I was well in the stone room? Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled and looked up at the pair of eyes full of guilt and pain. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be startled. She originally intended to joke with Di Beichun. She didn't expect Di Beichun's expression. Wife, I'm sorry. Di Beichun's voice was low and hoarse. I didn't take good care of you. Hearing the deep self-blame in Di Beichun's words, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but say, I was very good inside. Nothing happened. Instead, my strength has improved. You don't have to blame yourself. Di Beichun shook his head. Wifey, you don't have to comfort me. This time, I didn't take good care of you. Seeing Di Beichun's serious expression, Bailey Hongzhuang was also a little worried. Anything can happen in the monument. You have tried your best to take care of me, not to mention that my luck is very good. This is an opportunity for me. It's great that wifey can come out safely. Di Beichun saw Bailey Hongzhuang's worried appearance, and his heart softened. He felt even more fortunate. Fortunately, his wifey was safe and sound. Otherwise, he really didn't know what to do. Chapter 535. If he had been more careful, Bailey Hongzhuang would not have disappeared from his sight. Anything could happen in the ancient ruins, and some cruel and terrible things were not uncommon. What happened this time was a wake-up call for him. He swore to himself that he would never let such a thing happen again. Seeing that Di Beichun's face looked better, Bailey Hongzhuang breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't want Di Beichun to blame himself too much because of this incident. Perhaps the master of the ruins had made such a plan when he designed the stone room switch. How could they have predicted it in advance? How were you in the stone room after that? Bailey Hongzhuang asked softly with concern in her dark and bright eyes. During the time when she was trapped in the stone room, she was also very worried about Di Beichun's situation. When she saw Di Beichun, she had already checked Di Beichun's situation. Fortunately, Di Beichun was not in any danger, which made her feel relieved. After the sudden appearance of the stone door separated you and me, I found that I couldn't hear any sound in the stone room. Even the voices of the two practitioners who were shouting outside the stone room had disappeared. Originally, I thought you were in danger, but after confirming that the stone room was silent, I felt a little relieved. However, I couldn't find a way to leave the stone room. I could only absorb all the elemental energy fruits in the stone room, and finally found the key in one of the elemental energy fruits. Speaking of this, Di Beichun's eyes lit up. I also found a black iron box in the stone room. There was a sword in the box. The more Bailey Hongzhuang heard Di Beichun's words, the more she was sure that she was in the same situation as Di Beichun. The things in the stone room were split into two, and the sudden appearance of the stone door was only to separate her from Di Beichun. This must have been planned by the owner of the stone room. Therefore, it was not that Di Beichun did not take good care of her, but that the owner of the ruins had already decided to separate them. Even if Di Beichun was beside her at that time, the owner of the ruins should have other ways to separate the two of them. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichun's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. He asked, "How did you know?" Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Her beautiful and enchanting smile bloomed on her exquisite face. It was pleasing to the eye and unforgettable, because the situation I encountered in the stone room was exactly the same as yours. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Identical? Di Beichun was slightly startled. He could not help but recall that when Bailey Hongzhuang separated from him, she found a box on the wall. In that case, isn't that? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. Yes, this should be deliberately done by the owner of the ruins. The things in the stone room were originally divided into two. After Di Beichun suddenly understood, he could not help but frown. His handsome eyes were full of thoughts. So what is the meaning of the owner of the ruins doing this? As far as the current situation was concerned, the two of them had taken a big advantage. Even if the other cultivators had also gained a lot, there was still a big gap compared to the two of them. Chapter 536. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were thinking about the deep meaning of the arrangement of the master of the monument, the other people's eyes could not help but fall on the two of them. Bailey Hongzhuang broke through to the first level of the Red Realm in just half a month. Yan Lingxian was a little incredulous. This progress was too great. It took him a long time to break through from the middle stage of the mysterious Ian realm to the first level of the Red Realm. It seems that Bailey Hongzhuang got an opportunity in the monument, so she can directly break through from the acquired realm to the innate realm. Huang Fuhui sighed. It seemed that their luck was not as good as Bailey Hongzhuang's. If this opportunity fell on him, his strength could be improved again, surpassing Yin Lingxian and others. Lin Yirou's pretty face was also filled with emotion. Even though she had never underestimated Bailey Hongzhuang, now it seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang was more complicated than she thought. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were the first to pass through the illusion. This alone shows that their strength can't be underestimated. It can only be said that our speed of seeing through the illusion is too slow. Yin Lingxian frowned. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun are together. Why are you sure that Bailey Hongzhuang's strength can't be underestimated? Maybe Bailey Hongzhuang was able to get out of the illusion because of Di Beichun. They were all convinced of Di Beichun's strength. After all, Di Beichun had been famous for a long time. He was very famous among the young cultivators of the Shengxian continent, and they also admired him very much. It was normal to be defeated by Di Beichun. It was not difficult for them to accept, but if they lost to the unknown Bailey Hongzhuang in the illusion, it was somewhat difficult to accept. Lin Yirou raised her eyebrows slightly, and her calm face was filled with a deep smile. Looking at Lin Yirou's expression, Yin Lingxian was more certain that Lin Yirou knew something he did not know. He couldn't help but ask, "Lin Yirou, what do you know? Don't keep me guessing. Tell me directly." "Miss Lin, it's better to tell us what you know so that we can analyze it." Huang Fuhui also echoed. Lin Yirou saw that Yin Lingxian and Huang Fuhui were so curious, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. Before hearing the family cultivators talk about the illusion, did you know that what we encountered before was an illusion? Yin Lingxian and Huang Fuhui looked at each other and shook their heads together. "We didn't know." "That's right. What do you mean?" Yin Lingxian frowned. Why did he have a feeling that the more Lin Yirou spoke, the more he didn't understand? "I heard the conversation between Han Xiling and Di Beichun before. Di Beichun said that what he saw before was an illusion. He didn't know it at first, and it was Bailey Hongzhuang who told him. This proves that Bailey Hongzhuang knows no less than we know, and even more than us." With Lin Yirou's words, Yin Lingxian and Huang Fuhui's faces were also dignified. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang really had a lot of secrets. As the children of aristocratic families, they always knew a lot of things, but for this illusion, it was really the first time they had seen it, and the first time they had heard about it. Maybe Bailey Hongzhuang just happened to know these special things. Yin Lingxian said slowly. Chapter 537. As soon as these words came out, Yin Lingxian and Huang Fuhui's faces suddenly changed. They thought that the word illusion was spread by the cultivators in the family. But after Lin Yirou said this, it meant that the first person to discover the illusion was Bailey Hongzhuang. According to what you mean, Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang were able to come out of the illusion in the first place because of Bailey Hongzhuang? Yin Lingxian's eyes showed an incredible look. This was too incredible. How could an ordinary young lady of the general's mansion know so many things? Otherwise, Lin Yirou asked, with your intelligence and wisdom, you shouldn't deceive yourself. Yin Lingxian's expression changed slightly. As Lin Yirou said, they were not fools to be able to mix in the family to their current status. There was no need to deceive oneself at all. The most important thing was to recognize the reality. Now, all the things pointed to Bailey Hongzhuang, coupled with the acupuncture skills that Bailey Hongzhuang had shown before, it could be seen that Bailey Hongzhuang was not simple. Huang Fu Hui shook his head with emotion. I said that the woman Di Beichun likes can't be an ordinary person. Now it seemed that I was right. Jian also heard the conversation between Lin Yi-ro and the other two, but now she had no room to speak. Although she did not believe that Bailey Hongzhuang was really so powerful, Bailey Hongzhuang had just saved her life. If she were to be enemies with Bailey Hongzhuang again, no doubt everyone would say that she was a villain who repaid kindness with ingratitude. Even so, Ji Yin'er's heart was still unwilling. After all, they had really lost too much face this time around. Lin Yi-ro and Huang Fu Hui were a little better, but Yin Lingxian was definitely a guy who did not mind exposing people's scars. She believed that after the end of this trip to the ancient monument, Yin Lingxian would definitely spread her story. When that time came, she would have a headache thinking about how to deal with this problem. Han Shiling's face was leisurely and indifferent. He had always maintained an indifferent attitude towards the conversation between Lin Yi-ro and others, as if he didn't take it to heart at all. However, as long as someone looked at Han Shiling carefully, they would find that her hands were tightly gripping her clothes, and that pair of limpid eyes were also filled with unease. Brother D had not rested for 3 days and 3 nights, because he was worried about Bailey Hongzhuang's safety. His gaze was fixed on the stone door. Even when she spoke to Big Brother D still looked indifferent, as if he had already lost his heart. This was the first time she had seen Big Brother D so worried about someone. In the past, other than the sect master, Big Brother D had the same attitude towards everyone else. He would not care or worry about them. She knew that it was because Big Brother D did not care about others at all. As for her, she had been working hard to become the person Big Brother D cared about. However, before she succeeded, she discovered that another woman had made Big Brother D lose his appetite. When she thought of Big Brother D's expression at that time, she felt that someone had ruthlessly cut her heart with a knife. Her heart was so painful that she couldn't breathe. Now, she heard how excellent Bailey Hongzhuang was and how not simple she was. Her mood could be imagined. She didn't believe that Bailey Hongzhuang was a great person. She was just an ordinary young miss of the general's mansion. Chapter 538. Han Shiling sneered in her heart. Lin Yi-ro and others thought they were smart, but in fact, they were just a bunch of idiots. They were completely intimidated by Big Brother D's reputation. They felt that with Big Brother D's ability, it was impossible for him to like an ordinary woman, so they thought so highly of Bailey Hongzhuang. In fact, she was very clear about Big Brother D's situation in the past 3 years. She could almost imagine what kind of drama was going on between Big Brother D and Bailey Hongzhuang. It was nothing more than Big Brother D being depressed after his injury, and Bailey Hongzhuang happened to be by Big Brother D's side. With her identity, she naturally had to stay in the sect to cultivate. She couldn't stay with Big Brother D in Feng Bo country, and Bailey Hongzhuang just took advantage of the time when she and Big Brother D were separated. If it was hers, it was hers. She would never allow others to take away her things. Thinking of this, Han Shiling no longer hesitated and walked to Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang's side. With an elegant and comfortable smile on her beautiful and refined face, Han Shiling's face showed some concern. Big Brother D, you haven't had a good rest these days. It's better to eat something and have a good rest first. Di Beichun looked at the food that Han Shiling handed over. He looked at Han Shiling with a little surprise and said, "Shiling, you eat by yourself. I also prepared food here." Hearing this, Han Shiling's expression stiffened. The smile on her pretty face was a bit unnatural, but she quickly covered it up. "Big Brother D, this is the food you have always liked in the sect. You can eat it." Seeing that Han Shiling was so insistent, Di Beichun took it and said, "Shiling, thank you." Han Shiling's smile widened a little. However, before Han Shiling's smile completely bloomed, Di Beichun's words made her smile freeze on her lips. "Wife, this is the specialty snack of Tiangang sect. Do you want to try it?" Di Beichun turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang. His godlike perfect face had a gentle and caring smile. Obviously, Bailey Hongzhuang was the most beautiful scenery in his eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun with some surprise. She didn't know if Di Beichun was doing it on purpose, but such an attitude would obviously make Han Shilling feel uncomfortable. Could it be that Di Beichun wanted to use this method to make Han Shilling give up? For a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't grasp Di Beichun's thoughts. However, since Di Beichun had done so, she would go with the flow. Sure, let me try it. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a smile as she directly took a piece and put it in her mouth. With this taste, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes also lit up. Tiangang's sect not only had a strong background, but the taste of this food was also very good. As the head of an aristocratic family in her previous life, she had eaten a lot of good things, but after crossing over, she was not as happy as before. In order to improve her strength as soon as possible, she focused her energy on cultivation and didn't care much about food. Not bad, it's delicious. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's playful and cute appearance, Di Beichun's eyes quietly deepened. It's good that you like it. In the future, I will take you to Tiangang's sect to taste all these snacks. Chapter 539. Not only Han Shilling, but on the other side, Ji and and the other three were all looking at the interaction between Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang with an incredible look. My God, did they see wrongly? Di Beichun, who had always been cold, was now so gentle to Bailey Hongzhuang? Could it be any more exaggerated? What happened during this time? They almost doubted whether the man in front of them was really Di Beichun. It's over. Di Beichun has really fallen this time. In front of everyone, he dotes on Bailey Hongzhuang so much. It is definitely true love. Yin Ling Xian sighed, but there was a bit of pride in his smile. Since Di Beichun was so true to Bailey Hongzhuang, then Han Shilling and Di Beichun should have no possibility before. So, did he not have a chance? How did Di Gongzi become like this? Ji and eyebrows wrinkled. This was really unbelievable. She used to think that Di Beichun treated everyone with a high attitude, but he treated Han Shilling differently. Now it seems that Di Beichun treated Han Shilling differently, but he treated Bailey Hongzhuang as if he was a completely different person. Is it really like what everyone said, that once a person meets someone they really like, they will become different? Haha, this is how you should show off your love. Han Shilling will be angered to death. Xiaobai was proud for a while. The more she looked at Di Beichun, the more she liked him. This matter was really done beautifully. Yes, she should be angered to death. Master's man can only be master's man. No one else can. Xiao He jumped even more happily. Di Beichun's performance made them certain that they had not misjudged him. Otherwise, the black and white demons would definitely teach Di Beichun a lesson. Baishir had now returned to the Chaos Ring. The Qing Tian Mo alligator's demon crystal was full of energy. In addition, Baishir had also consumed a certain amount of elemental energy fruits. There should be no problem in breaking through. The only problem was that the white lion had absorbed too much energy this time. It would not be able to completely absorb it in a short period of time. It would probably need to go into seclusion for a period of time. Han Shilling's face stiffened as he looked at the two lovey-dovey people beside him. Even though his heart was in turmoil, his face still flashed with a stubborn indifference. Bailey Hongzhuang calmly sized up Han Shilling. She had to admit that Han Shilling's ability to disguise himself was pretty good. If it was an ordinary woman, she would have already lost her temper after seeing such a situation. However, Han Shilling was still able to pretend that nothing had happened. Just this point alone had already surpassed many women. Looking at this posture, it was obvious that Han Shilling was prepared to be the third party until the end. He had no intention of leaving at all. I'm going to see what's wrong with the closed stone door. You haven't had a good rest these days. Take a rest first, Bailey Hongzhuang said with concern. She had heard from Jiqing that Di Beichun had not rested these days because he was worried about her safety. Presumably, Di Beichun was also in the same state when he was in the stone room. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to absorb all the energy of the elemental energy fruits in such a short time and leave the stone room. Hearing this, Di Beichun looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was not unhappy at all, but was very worried about him, he was relieved. Be careful. Chapter 540. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang leave, Han Shilling couldn't help but stare at Bailey Hongzhuang's figure. An indescribable resentment accumulated in her chest. Han Shilling, has always been arrogant. Among many genius cultivators, she has always been a bright star and never felt that she would lose to anyone. However, in terms of feelings, she lost to such a woman who only had looks. Well, it won't be long before Bailey Hongzhuang disappears from my sight. Han Shilling comforted herself. There were too many people now, and she couldn't ruin her image. She was just a young lady of the general's mansion. If she wanted to kill her, there were many means. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked to the front of the closed stone door under the gaze of everyone. Many cultivators gathered in front of the stone door, constantly groping for the way to open the stone door. Even more cultivators were sitting lazily near the stone door. During this period of time, they had already checked every inch of the stone door, but they did not find any traps. Not only that, they also joined forces to attack the stone door, but the hardness of the stone door was beyond their imagination. No matter what they did, the stone door would not open. Seeing the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang, the cultivators of Ji family could not help but give way. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang had saved Jiyun before, and their Ji family was indebted to her. The disciples of Tiangang Zong also gave way. Although they followed Han Shilling, the status of Di Beichen's wife was not simple. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the stone door in front of her. This stone door was the same as the stone door in the monument. Except for the slightly different size, there was no difference. In addition, the way of thinking of the owner of this monument was different from others. She had to think in some unexpected places to find a way to open the stone door. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was looking for the mechanism on the stone door, Lin Yiro had unknowingly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. "Miss Bailey, I am Lin Yiro," Lin Yiro said gently and politely. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly turned and looked at Lin Yiro on the side. "Hello, Miss Lin." For Lin Yiro, she was quite impressed. Although Lin Yiro did not show much and had never communicated with her, from some of the things that happened later, she could judge that Lin Yiro was a very smart woman. If she was not smart, with her gentle appearance, she could not get a certain status in the family. On the contrary, there were definitely many people who were happy to bully her. "I admire the ability of Miss Bailey. I wonder if I can be friends with you?" Lin Yiro asked with a smile. His gentle and modest appearance made people feel comfortable and relaxed, making it impossible for them to find a reason to refuse. "She, of course, Lin Yiro zest. S's aunts. She s Xia's." It was the same as when Xia Jiqing proposed to make friends with her. However, Xia Jiqing was a true friend, and this Lin Yiro was just a friend of interest. If she guessed correctly, the relationship between Lin Yiro and Han Shilling should not be good, so she came to her to make friends. Chapter 541. Since Miss Bailey and I have become friends, then I will advise you. I hope you won't blame me for talking too much, Lin Yiro said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a smile. "Please. Since it's a kind reminder, how can I think so? Han Shilling is not so soft. Since Miss Bailey is with Di Beichen, you must be careful of Han Shilling's means. You must not be careless." Lin Yiro lowered her voice and said in a voice that only she and Bailey Hongzhuang could hear. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows were slightly raised. It seemed that her guess was right. There must be some conflicts between Lin Yiro and Han Shilling that others did not know about. However, what Lin Yiro said was not wrong. Han Shilling was definitely not a person who was easy to deal with. The reason why Han Shilling had been pretending to be safe and had not done anything to her was that Han Shilling was smart enough and did not want to show a bad side in front of Di Beichen. Once the trip to the ruins was over, Han Shilling would definitely take action. At that time, her troubles would come one after another. However, trouble was also the motivation to move forward. If Han Shilling sent trouble out, then she would use these troubles as a sharpening stone to hone her strength. It was also a good choice. "Thank you for reminding me, Miss Lin. I will be more careful." With a gentle and bright smile on her beautiful face, Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferent and serious. since Lin Yi-ro reminded her kindly. Then she accepted Lin Yi-ro's kindness. Because there was no conflict of interest between the two of them, she believed that Lin Yi-ro had no intention of harming her. After all, the enemy of an enemy was a friend. Their common opponent was Han Xiling. Yin Ling Xian and others saw Lin Yi-ro suddenly talking to Bailey Hongzhuang in a low voice. Seeing that they were talking happily, they were a little surprised. This time, Lin Yi-ro's behavior was completely different from usual. He didn't know what was going on. After Han Xiling warned Bailey Hongzhuang, he didn't say anything else and returned to his place with a smile. With Bailey Hongzhuang's current abilities, it was enough for her to express goodwill and get closer to her. However, it was not enough for her to reveal everything. However, it was not a bad choice to form a good relationship with her now. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but walk to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and asked, "Hongzhuang, what did Lin Yi-ro say to you?" As soon as the words left her mouth, Xia Jiqing felt that she was being too nosy. She couldn't help but explain, "I just feel that there is nothing good about the children of these families. That's why I asked. If it's not convenient for you, you don't have to answer." Looking at Xia Jiqing's anxious appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. "Jiqing, I know what you're thinking. You don't have to explain." Xia Jiqing was still a little worried, but after seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang didn't seem to be faking it, she was relieved. "That's good. I was afraid that you would misunderstand me. With the relationship between the two of us, how could I misunderstand you?" Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and patted Xia Jiqing's shoulder, indicating that Xia Jiqing shouldn't think too much. "Lin Yi-ro just reminded me of something. There is no other meaning. Don't worry." Chapter 542. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips were filled with a gentle smile. "I understand what you mean. Hongzhuang, you're much smarter than me. I believe you must understand it better than me." Xia Jiqing smiled, and there was a bit of embarrassment between her eyebrows. She was so concerned that she forgot about Hongzhuang's intelligence and wisdom. Seeing this, the smile in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes widened a bit. It was already a great gain to be able to meet a good friend like Xia Jiqing on this trip to Kanglan College. Bailey Hongzhuang knocked on the closed stone door, listening to the difference in the sound of the stone door. "Hongzhuang, you don't have to knock. In the past 10 days, everyone has almost checked every difference in every place of this stone door. Even the crack of the door has not been missed. No mechanism has been found." Xia Jiqing shrugged her shoulders. During this time, so many people had used all the methods they could think of, but there was still no harvest. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang also nodded. Everyone had been here for so long, they should have tried everything. So, what else could they have missed? The deep phoenix eyes flashed with wisdom and thought. Bailey Hongzhuang carefully looked at every part of the stone door. Since this stone door was closed, there must be a way to open it. It was just that everyone had not noticed it for a while. "I really admire the idea of the master of this monument. This mechanism is hidden so that no one can find it." Xia Jiqing's face was full of helplessness. Whether it was the previous illusion or the stone door in front of her, she could only admire the master of the monument. With her IQ and ability, she was too powerless in the face of this monument. Bai Junyu also walked to Xia Jiqing's side at this moment. The master of the monument is worthy of being a strong person. His ideas are naturally not so easy to guess. It is normal that we did not find it for a while. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bai Junyu behind Xia Jiqing. The smile in her eyes revealed a bit of ridicule. After not seeing each other for half a month, she felt that the relationship between Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing was a lot closer. "Bailey Hongzhuang, you just came out of the stone room. Don't you need to rest for a while?" Bai Junyu asked with concern. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. "No, I have been cultivating in the stone room. I'm not tired at all." In fact, she had been in seclusion for half a month. She just wanted to exercise her muscles and bones. She had maintained the same posture for half a month, and her body was a little stiff. Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes fell on the handle of the stone door. There were two clear, circular grooves under the two rings. "What is this?" Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. Bai Junyu glanced at the thing that Bailey Hongzhuang was pointing at and smiled. "This is just a decoration. It has no use. Everyone has already studied it. Xiao Jiqing also nodded slightly. This circular groove was engraved with a pattern. In addition to decoration, they could not think of any other use. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were tightly fixed on these two grooves, because she felt that the pattern of these two grooves was somewhat familiar. In the end, where had she seen this pattern? Chapter 543. Mistress, have you thought of something? Noticing the change in Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, Xiao He could not help but ask. After being with its mistress for so long, it had a certain understanding of the changes in its mistress's expression. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with admiration, but the corners of her lips curled up slightly. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, do you think the shape of this groove is similar to the shape of the back of the lapis lazuli sword's hilt? Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's reminder, Xiao He and Xiao Bai could not help but imagine the lapis lazuli sword's appearance in their minds. Thinking about it, the two furballs' eyes shone brightly. It is indeed very similar. Xiao He said excitedly, Mistress, shall I go into the chaos ring to confirm it? Previously, they had only noticed the lapis lazuli sword's body and did not pay much attention to the hilt. They only felt that it was very similar and wanted to confirm whether it was the same or not. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. All right, let me know after you've confirmed the result. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang pretended to touch her hair and directly took Xiao He down from her hair. Taking advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention, she put her into the chaos ring. Ever since she had the chaos ring as a storage space, she had placed all her important items into the chaos ring. After all, the Cosmo sack was at risk of being stolen, but the chaos ring was not. After she had obtained the lapis lazuli sword, she had directly placed it into the chaos ring. So now she needed Xiao He to help her check the chaos ring. Once Xiao He entered the chaos ring, she did not delay and immediately found the lapis lazuli sword. After a careful comparison, Xiao He's face was filled with pride. Mistress, you're right. That groove is exactly the same as the hilt of the lapis lazuli sword. With Xiao He's affirmative answer, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile became more confident. In this way, these two grooves should correspond to the swords that she and Di Beichun had obtained. However, with Di Beichun's intelligence and wisdom, he should have discovered this. Jiqing, did Di Beichun look for the mechanism on the stone door these past few days? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Xia shook her head. I didn't see him come to the stone door. These days, Di Beichun has been worried about your safety. He didn't have the mind to pay. He did not pay attention to other things. He did not even look at this stone door. Bai Junyu's face was filled with a smile. This made them deeply aware of Di Beichun's feelings for Bailey Hongzhuang. Speaking of which, this was really an enviable pair. So that's how it is. Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly understood. She said that with Di Beichun's intelligence and wisdom, it was impossible for him to not notice this. It turned out that he had not paid attention to it these past few days. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was also a little moved. Most of the top genius cultivators in the continent put strength as the most important position. Di Beichun did not have much interest in the treasures in this monument for her. It could be seen that he cared about her. When she thought of Di Beichun not resting for several days, Bailey Hongzhuang decided not to tell him this news first. After Di Beichun had a good rest and adjusted his state, she would tell him about this discovery. What is the meaning of this arrangement by the master of the monument? Chapter 544. From the exact same treatment in the stone room to the two of them working together to open the stone door, could it be that the inheritance of the ruins was to be given to the two of them? Or could it be that the inheritance was to be given to one of the two? If it was the first, it would naturally be the best. But if it was the second, the situation might become cruel. For a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang could not determine what the owner of the ruins was thinking. The only thing she could be sure of was that she and Di Beichun had obtained more things in the ruins than the other cultivators. Not only that, the two of them had a higher chance of obtaining the inheritance than the other cultivators. Regardless of the final result, at least they were now in an advantageous position. As for the final situation, they could only take one step at a time. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking to herself, an elegant and indifferent voice was heard. "Miss Bailey, did you discover anything?" Bailey Hongzhuang shifted her gaze from the stone door and turned to look at Han Shieling. Her exquisite and beautiful face was filled with a faint smile as she said, "Even Miss Han Shieling did not discover anything. How could I?" Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's reply, Han Shieling expression changed a little, but his expression remained indifferent. "That may not be the case. Miss Bailey is so intelligent and has extraordinary medical skills. It's normal for you to discover something that we can't." When the crowd saw Han Shieling and Bailey Hongzhuang standing together, their expressions became strange. So far, this was the first time Han Shieling and Bailey Hongzhuang had interacted. Although they had not interacted before and had not had any conflicts, the crowd understood that among all the people present, the two of them had the deepest enmity. However, the two of them were not simple people and did not show their emotions on their faces. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. "Miss Han, you flatter me." After saying that, Bailey Hongzhuang did not intend to talk too much with Han Shieling. She cannot be bothered to waste time on such unnecessary hypocrisy. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang walked past Han Shieling's words quietly reached her ears. "Don't tell me you think that Big Brother D really likes you?" There was a hint of disdain in his mocking words. Han Shieling's smile remained. In the eyes of the others, it was as if the two of them were greeting each other. Bailey Hongzhuang's footsteps paused. Her expression was as calm as the wind. "Miss Han, what do you think?" Han Shieling wanted to test Bailey Hongzhuang. At the same time, she wanted to warn Bailey Big Brother D to maintain her image. However, there was no need to pretend in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's answer made her a little surprised. Her calm reply was full of confidence and certainty. Until now, she had rarely seen a woman who could be so confident in front of her. Han Shieling's mind raced, but she did not reveal any of it on her face. "Based on your status, you're not worthy of Big Brother D." Han Shieling's pitch-black eyes flashed with a cold warning. She hoped that Bailey Hongzhuang would give up on this improper thought and save her some trouble. The corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's mouth curved into an enchanting and charming arc. Her already beautiful face was filled with infinite magnificence, making people feel breathtaking. Chapter 545. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Han Shieling indifferently. Her long and narrow phoenix eyes were filled with a radiant smile, and her expression was natural but full of arrogance. Status was just an excuse for not being able to obtain it. It was not lethal to her at all. If Han Shieling thought that these words could hurt her, he was underestimating her. She did not want to fall out with Han Shieling directly. However, since Han Shieling had started the fight, there was no need for her to swallow her anger. She, Bailey Hongzhuang, had always liked to face her enemies head-on. Han Shieling's face stiffened when he heard the sarcasm in Bailey Hongzhuang's words. She had always been high and mighty, like the moon surrounded by the stars. Now, someone actually dared to mock her? She forcibly suppressed the anger in her heart, and a trace of coldness appeared in her eyes. Big Brother D has only been at the bottom of the valley for 3 years. That gave you an opportunity to take advantage of him. However, this is definitely not the end. Bailey Hongzhuang saw the uneasiness in Han Shieling's eyes. It seemed that Di Beichen held a very important position in Han Shieling's heart. Otherwise, based on Han Shieling's character, she would not have such a big change in her emotions. Since that's the case, why don't you wait until that day to talk tough with me? At least now, you're my defeated opponent. Bailey Hongzhuang left with a proud and cold smile. She took a step forward and walked in the direction of Di Beichen. Han Shieling had not been able to grasp Di Beichen's heart for more than 10 years. Now, it was even more impossible. It was just that Han Shieling herself did not understand. Perhaps Han Shieling had already understood, but refused to admit it. Han Shieling watched Bailey Hongzhuang's back as she proudly walked away. His hands gradually clenched under his sleeves, and the murderous intent in his eyes grew stronger. That damned Bailey Hongzhuang. Did she really think that she was some kind of great person? With her status, if she wanted to kill Bailey Hongzhuang, it would be as easy as crushing an ant. Xia Jiqing looked coldly at Han Shieling. From the first time she saw Han Shieling, she didn't have a good impression of him. Now, it seemed that this Han Shieling was indeed a loathsome person. Everyone's eyes fell on Han Shieling and Bailey Hongzhuang. From the looks of it, Bailey Hongzhuang seemed to have won the first round. Seeing this, Yin Lingxian walked to Han Shiling's side, his handsome eyes flashing with concern. "Miss Han, are you all right?" Han Shilling looked up at Yin Lingxian and asked, "Why am I not good?" Hearing this, Yin Lingxian's expression was a little awkward. He didn't know how to answer Han Shiling's question. I'm just concerned about you." "Thank you for your concern, young Master Yin. I'm fine." Han Shiling's elegant face showed a bit of alienation and indifference. After faintly dropping a sentence, he no longer spoke and returned to the Tiangang Zone team. Ji Yun, and others looked at Yin Lingxian's deflated appearance and couldn't help but smile. "Yin Lingxian, don't look for trouble. Han Shieling is a person with eyes higher than the sky. Except for Di Beichun, others are simply not in her eyes." Ji Yun's smile was a bit sarcastic. She had a lot of contact with Han Shieling. This woman was simply out of this world. Others simply could not enter her eyes. Chapter 546. Ji Yun, even if I'm asking for a snub, so what? There are many people who have been defeated by Han Shieling, but there is no one else but you who has been defeated by the young lady of the general's mansion. Yin Lingxian had liked Han Shieling for a long time. Although he always knew that Han Shieling liked Di Beichun, he still had a glimmer of hope for his goddess. Now that Ji Yun said this to him in front of everyone, he only felt that his dignity had been trampled, so his words became more and more impolite. Ji Yun did not expect Yin Lingxian to say such words, and for a moment, she could not help but be stunned. "Yin Lingxian, don't go too far." Ji Yun stood up and looked at Yin Lingxian sternly. Being defeated by Bailey Hongzhuang was her sore spot. It was not easy for everyone to stop talking about it, but now Yin Lingxian actually brought it up again. It was really hateful. "So what if I go too far?" Yin Lingxian said. Usually, Ji Yun did not involve him, but now that Ji Yun wanted to find trouble with him, he naturally would not be afraid. For a time, swords were drawn. Ji Yun and Yin Lingxian did not give way to each other, and this was how they became enemies. Bailey Hongzhuang sat down next to Di Beichun. At this moment, Di Beichun was resting with his eyes closed. After several days of tension, Di Beichun was very tired at the moment. Han Shilling looked at Bailey Hongzhuang provocatively. The number and quality of men who pursued her far exceeded that of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang's mouth evoked a smile. This kind of thing may be a proud capital for other women, but for her, it did not have the slightest feeling. "I don't know what Han Shieling is so proud of. Our master is also pursued by many people, okay?" Xiao Hei put her hands on her hips, and her face showed anger. Xiao Bai shook her head. "Let her be arrogant. The fact that Di Beichun is with master has already angered her to death." Upon hearing Xiao Bai's words, Xiao Hei nodded. "That's true. In that case, I'm not angry anymore." The cultivators were still looking at the stone door, unwilling to give up. The biggest treasure in the ruins was inside. It was impossible for them to give up just like that. Just by looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's harvest, they were already very jealous. Moreover, Bailey Hongzhuang's harvest was only a part of the ruins. The most important ruins had yet to appear. Isn't this ruin a little too strange? There's no mechanism at all. God knows what the owner of this ruin is thinking. There's no mechanism on the stone door at all. In my opinion, why don't we just force the stone door open? Some cultivators were also angry after fumbling for a long time. Since they couldn't use tricks, they could only use brute force. This idea may not be feasible. We've already tried it before. This stone door is indestructible. With our strength, we can't break it all. Everyone's face was frustrated. They thought that finding the ruins was already a great fortune. They didn't expect to be trapped outside the door. The feeling of not being able to walk past the gold and silver treasures in front of them was really maddening. "Teacher, if we don't open the door of this stone room, can we leave here?" Xia Jiqing asked aloud. Chapter 547. However, as Xia Jiqing's voice fell, everyone's face changed a bit. They had only thought about opening the stone door before, but they had never thought about whether they could leave the monument without opening the stone door. After all, after they had entered the monument, the door had been closed, and they had not gone back to see it. Now it seemed that it was very likely that if they did not open the stone door, they would not be able to leave. Liu Huayan's face was also a bit hesitant. I'm not sure. Xia Jiqing's face was a bit ugly. Sure enough, as soon as they entered the monument, their life and death were no longer in their own hands. Then what should we do? Xia Jiqing's face was bitter. If they could not open the stone door, they would have to stay here forever. There must be a way to open this stone door. Let's be patient and look for it. Fu Hongba comforted. At this point, they had no other way. The other cultivators, after being reminded by Xia Jiqing, worked harder to find the switch of the stone door. They could not die here. Bailey Hongzhuang patted Xia Jiqing's shoulder, indicating that Xia Jiqing did not need to worry. Seeing this, Xia Jiqing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with some surprise. Could it be that Hongzhuang had a way? Without waiting for Xia Jiqing to ask, Bailey Hongzhuang had already nodded. Don't worry. Let Di Beichen have a good rest first. Xia Jiqing looked at Di Beichen and understood. I understand. Bai Junyu looked at Xia Jiqing and Bailey Hongzhuang whispering. He had some doubts in his heart, but he did not ask much. When Di Beichen rested, he opened his eyes and saw Bailey Hongzhuang sitting next to him. His handsome face was filled with a comfortable smile. Wife, didn't you rest? Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. I retreated for half a month before coming out. I don't need a rest. That's right. I found the mechanism of this stone door. Hearing her words, Di Beichen's eyes were filled with astonishment. Although he always knew that his wife was very smart, so many cultivators had studied for so many days, but had not been able to figure out the mechanism. But Bailey Hongzhuang had only used a short time to figure it out. How'd you find out? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled meaningfully. If you go and take a look, you'll find out too. Oh, Di Beichen raised his eyebrows slightly. Why is my wife so sure? Come with me and you'll know. Bailey Hongzhuang stood up first and looked at Di Beichen with a sweet smile. Seeing the bright smile, Di Beichen's eyes flashed with a bright smile. He immediately stood up and followed Bailey Hongzhuang to the stone door. When everyone saw Bailey Hongzhuang coming again, they couldn't help but feel a little strange. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang had only stayed here for a short time before going back. It was not until Di Beichen had rested that she came over. Could it be that she had found something? Xia Jiqing and the others looked at each other and immediately followed behind Bailey Hongzhuang to the stone door. As early as before, Bailey Hongzhuang had already greeted Xia Jiqing, and Xia Jiqing had also carefully informed the others. They had to take the opportunity to grab the best position. Chapter 548. Now everyone could only hope that someone would be able to successfully open the stone door, otherwise they would be trapped in the ruins forever. Therefore, since Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had come to try to open it, they naturally had no reason to stop them. Di Beichen, look here. Bailey Hongzhuang pointed to the circular groove on the stone door. Di Beichen's gaze fell on the circular groove. With this look, a very familiar feeling emerged in his heart, and he immediately understood the meaning of Bailey Hongzhuang's words. Among everyone, only he and Bailey Hongzhuang could understand the meaning of this groove. The others must only think of it as a decoration. In this way, this was arranged by the owner of the ruins long ago. Di Beichen looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang and said meaningfully, Wife, what do you think? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded lightly. The meaning of the smile on the corner of her mouth, except for Di Beichen, no one else understood. Since you already know, there is no need to waste any more time. Not far away, Han Schilling looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's tacit understanding, and the coldness in his eyes gradually deepened. After talking with Bailey Hongzhuang, she could already be sure that Bailey Hongzhuang was not a person who would retreat in the face of difficulties. It was impossible to make her take the initiative to withdraw. During this period of time in the ruins, she could only tolerate Bailey Hongzhuang, this thorn in her side, and make plans after leaving the ruins. In the next moment, under the shocked and confused eyes of everyone, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun took out two swords at the same time. After taking out the glass sword, Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that the sword in Di Beichun's hand was slightly different from her own glass sword. The glass sword was crystal clear, faintly suffused with a trace of bloody light, and the sword in Di Beichun's hand was also crystal clear, but suffused with a trace of golden light. At first glance, the two swords were very similar, but if one looked carefully, one would find that the lingering light was somewhat different. Not only that, the sword in Di Beichun's hand was a bit larger than the glass sword. Di Beichun also discovered the difference between the two swords. It could be said that there were slight differences in the similarities, but they came from the same hand. Could it be that these were a pair of swords? Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other and had some guesses in their minds. Bailey Hongzhuang carefully looked at the sword in Di Beichun's hand and found that Di's sword. It seemed that their guess should be correct. Why did Di Beichun suddenly take out two swords? Yin Lingxian looked at the movements of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun in confusion. It was really a little confusing. I don't know, but it seems that these two swords should not be ordinary, and their levels are very high. Huangfu Hui's eyes flashed with wisdom. He had always had a good understanding of weapons, so he could roughly see the level of the two swords at a glance. These two swords look very similar. What is the relationship between the two? Lin Yiro frowned. These two swords obviously had an unusual relationship. Listening to Lin Yiro's words, Huangfu Hui thought for a moment and said, "These two swords may be a pair of swords, that is, the swords used by couples or husband and wife." With the voice of Huangfu Hui falling, the eyes of Lin Yiro and others all changed. This kind of thing was not often seen on weekdays. Di Beichun could actually have it. Chapter 549. Han Shiling's eyes changed sharply, and he looked coldly at Lin Yiro. What she said really made him unhappy. Lin Yiro's face had a faint smile, as if she had not found Han Shiling's warning eyes, and directly turned her line of sight. Just as everyone was guessing the origin of the swords in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had raised the swords together and then inserted the hilt into the groove. Kacha! As the hilt was inserted into the groove, there was a crisp sound on the stone door. The originally slightly noisy environment. After this sound came out, everyone was quiet, and their eyes condensed on the groove. Boom! In the shocked eyes of everyone, the stone door slowly opened. The next moment, when everyone looked at the swords in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun again, their eyes had revealed a fiery light. At this point, there was no need for them to guess the origin of these two swords. Obviously, these two swords were obtained in a monument. Everyone's heart was burning. These two swords turned out to be the mechanism to open the stone door. It was definitely not simple. Maybe there would be a need for these two swords in the future. Xia Jiqing and others understood why Bailey Hongzhuang was so confident to be able to open the stone door. The mechanism of the stone door turned out to be this groove that they had always mistakenly thought to be a decoration. If it were not for Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun being here, they were afraid that they would be trapped in the monument and would not be able to find a way to open the stone door. Just as Xia Jiqing and others were feeling emotional, they suddenly found that the aura around them had quietly changed. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun put away their weapons for the first time, but the eyes of everyone looking at the two had become completely different. As long as anyone could get the two swords, the chances of getting the inheritance of the monument's owner would be greatly increased. Yin Lingxian and the others, who originally didn't have any thoughts about Bailey Hongzhuang and Lin Feng, started to ponder after seeing this scene. The inheritance of the Master of the Ruins was a rare treasure. Once they obtained it, their status in the clan would be greatly improved, and it would be incomparable to the past. For a moment, no one could remain calm in the face of such temptation. Di Beichun, Bailey Hongzhuang, hurry up and get in. Dongfang Yu hurriedly called out after noticing the restlessness of the crowd behind him. If the two of them did not leave quickly, he was afraid that they would have to bear the brunt of everyone's attacks. Hearing Dongfang Yu's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other. Under such circumstances, it was indeed better for them to go in first. Xia Jiqing and the others tacitly stood behind Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. At least they had to stop everyone for a while. Catch them. Don't let them get away. Yin Lingxian made a decision after thinking about it again and again. He must not give up such an opportunity to rise. Huang Fu Hui also quietly sent out his men. It was related to his own future. He couldn't give up just because of Di Beichen's identity. The cultivators of Tiangang Zone blocked the crowd with Xia Jiqing and the others. Di Beichen was very likely to be the young lord of Tiangang Zone. No matter what, they had to protect Di Beichen's safety. Chapter 550. Behind the stone door, a huge main hall appeared in the sight of the two people. The size of the main hall was completely beyond Bailey Hongzhuang's imagination. This main hall was comparable to the Tsanglan College's martial arts field, and its scope was shocking. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was immediately attracted by the two huge white jade sculptures in the main hall. The sculptures were carved with the figures of a man and a woman. The man was resolute and handsome, tall and straight, and his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. Just looking at him gave people a sense of awe. The woman was gentle and beautiful, with a faint smile on her mouth, gentle and charming. Her beautiful face was even more gentle and amiable. The only thing in common was that they both exuded a shocking and powerful aura. These two sculptures were carved incisively and vividly. If it wasn't for the difference in materials, they were no different from real people. This was the first time that Bailey Hongzhuang had seen such a perfect sculpture. This kind of carving was simply uncanny workmanship. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, it would have been hard to believe. It seems that these two should be the masters of this monument. The low and charming voice was full of certainty and confidence. Di Beichen looked at the two sculptures with admiration and respect. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. After seeing these two sculptures, she could also be sure that the Lu Li sword and Lu Guang sword that she and Di Beichen had obtained should be used by these two seniors. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang deeply bowed to the two masters of the monument. In any case, her strength could improve so much because of the gifts of these two masters, and the Lu Li sword would also become her weapon. For the gifts of the seniors, she should treat them with a grateful heart. At the same time, Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang also did the same thing. They came to the monument rashly, undoubtedly disturbing the two seniors. Although they couldn't do anything for the two masters of the monument, they should at least express their respect and gratitude. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. All this time, she had known that most of the ruins were built by one person. She had rarely heard of a couple building ruins together. Come to think of it, these two must have had a very good relationship. Even until the end of their lives, they were still together. After bowing, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't even try to avoid looking at the situation in the main hall. She turned to Di Beichen and said, "Shall we go out?" Since the others were coming for them, there was no reason for others to stand in their way. Di Beichen nodded. His eyes sparkled like stars as he said, "All right." In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen moved at the same time and opened the stone door. They had always faced their enemies head-on, unwilling to let others suffer for them. Previously, the situation had happened too suddenly, but now that he had reacted, he had to stand out. The cultivators of Kanglin College and Tiangang Zone were blocking the entry of other cultivators. Suddenly, the stone door behind them opened. Xia Jiqing and the others couldn't help but be startled. They looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with worry. What are you doing by opening the stone door? Didn't they know that once they came out, they would become the target of public criticism? Chapter 551. Are you sure you want to be my enemy? The low and dull voice was full of boundless power and domineering. Di Beichen's handsome face was indifferent and ruthless. His eyes gradually swept over Yin Lingxian and others. It was just a simple sentence, but the originally hostile atmosphere froze for a moment. Everyone looked at Di Beichen in shock. There was a group of people, just a word, a look, a movement could make people feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. Yin Lingxian and others couldn't help but be stunned. The reason why they were a little worried was because of Di Beichun. With Di Beichun's strength and determination, once Di Beichun went back this time, he would definitely settle this account with them. Their status in their own families was not weak, but they were only competitors for the successor, not the young masters of their families. If Di Beichun was determined to deal with them, their situation would be a bit difficult. Some of their hearts were once again shaken by Di Beichun's words. Yin Ling Xian and Huang Fu we couldn't help but look at Lin Yiro and Ji Yun. Now it was up to the attitude of the two of them. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes also fell on Ji Yun, and Lin Yiro. The cultivators of Songlan College were naturally on their side, but except for the strength of the two mentors, the strength of their students was not very strong. Needless to say, the cultivators of Tiangang Zone were very strong, but they were still dwarfed by the joint forces of the four great families. Now the biggest question was whether the teams of the four great families would join forces or not. Yin Lingxian and Huang Fu Hui had obviously formed an alliance at the moment, and Ji Yun-er's situation was quite awkward. Ji Yun must have wanted to kill him, but because he had just saved her life, if she directly pulled out her sword against him, it would be too ungrateful. If she didn't do anything, she would be unwilling to do so. As for Lin Yiro, her attitude was not clear enough. Previously, Lin Yiro undoubtedly wanted to establish a good relationship with her. If she pulled out her sword now, then everything before was equivalent to useless work. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment. She still felt that Lin Yiro should stand on the same front as Yin Lingxian. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang was guessing, Lin Yiro spoke first. Di Gongzi, Miss Bailey, I have no intention of being enemies with the two. In this battle, my Lin family will not participate. Lin Yiro's face had a faint smile, but her words. At the same time, after hearing Lin Yiro's decision, they took a few steps back and showed their attitude with their actions. It could be seen that Lin Yiro's words. Lin Yiro's heart, Lin Yiro's had, there was no reason for Lin's to do this. Of Lin to Ibei to Ro. Even the inheritance of this ancient monument in Lin Yiro's heart could not be compared with her hatred for Han Xiling. With Lin Yiro's statement, the atmosphere of the scene changed again. Once the Lin family withdrew from the battle, Yin Lingxian and the others' confidence would be reduced. Chapter 552. Everyone's eyes were focused on the cultivators of Ji family. The decision of Ji family would determine the situation at hand. If Ji family agreed, then the three of them would join forces to deal with the cultivators of Songlan College and Tiangang Zone. If Ji family did not agree, then only Yin family and Huang Fu family were left, and the possibility of winning was half and half. What's more, although Lin Yiro said that she would not be an enemy of Di Beichun, if they fought with Di Beichun and others, both sides would be injured. Wouldn't the Lin family be the fishermen who reaped the benefits? For a while, all the cultivators present had thousands of thoughts. Ji Yun was hesitant. She originally admired Di Beichun, but after the previous incident, she felt that Di Beichun was too indifferent to her, and Bailey Hongzhuang had just saved her. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a smile. This Ji Yun was really interesting. Didn't she know that she couldn't make a move? Even if she made up her mind to make a move, she still held a favor from Ji family. Once Ji Yun decided to make a move, she would bring out this favor. At that time, Ji Yun would really be in a difficult situation. Just as Ji Yun was hesitating, the head of Ji family had taken the lead in expressing his stance. Miss Bailey has been kind to our Ji family. We naturally will not make a move. Ji Yun was slightly stunned. She just turned around and was about to ask her family's cultivator why he made a decision directly, but she saw the cultivator looking at her deeply. There was a hint of warning between his eyebrows. Seeing this, Ji Yun also fell into silence. She also knew that the other party's warning had a certain reason. After the attitude of Ji family's cultivator, Xia Zhiqing and the others could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. It seemed that the crisis had been lifted a lot. Compared with the previous situation where they were bound to lose, at least now they still had the possibility of fighting. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's eyes immediately fell on Yin Lingxian and Huang Fu Hui. The current situation could be said to be 2-2. They believed that even if they wanted to make a move, they would have to think twice. Lin Yirou's direct withdrawal was beyond their expectations, so much so that it completely changed the situation. Yin Lingxian and Huang Fu Hui were also a little embarrassed. They thought that things would go smoothly, but they didn't expect things to turn out like this. Di Beichen looked coldly at Yin Lingxian and Yin Lingxian. He didn't say anything, but his aura had already spread out. The deterrence and pressure he emitted made people feel a little suffocated. Yin Lingxian, do you really want to be enemies with my Tiangang sect? Just as the atmosphere became rigid, Han Shiling, who had been silent all this time, suddenly stood up and spoke. His question was directed at Yin Lingxian. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a faint smile. This Han Shiling really knew how to do favors. Yin Lingxian, this poor guy, was going to be reduced to a pawn for her to use. From the looks of it, with Han Shiling's methods, she must have taken advantage of quite a few men. Sure enough, after Han Shiling said this, Yin Lingxian's face stiffened. There had always been a lot of conflicts over treasures. Even if there was a conflict between the two, it would not be blamed on the family. Han Shiling's simple sentence had already escalated the problem to the level of the entire Tiangang sect. Coupled with his feelings for Han Shiling, he had no way to answer this sentence. Chapter 553. Yin Lingxian had always admired Han Shiling, but he knew that with his current strength and achievements, the proud and arrogant Han Shiling would definitely look down on him. He knew that with Di Beichen there, the possibility of Han Shiling being with him was almost zero. Only now did he see a glimmer of hope. If he could get the inheritance of the ruins, then his strength would be greatly improved, and his status would also rise. In this way, he might be able to enter Han Shiling's eyes. However, with Han Shiling's current question, if he continued to do so, he would undoubtedly offend Han Shiling. When Han Shiling asked this question, everyone looked at Yin Lingxian strangely. After all, they were quite clear about the entanglements. Miss Han, I naturally won't be your enemy. Yin Lingxian's eyes changed from serious contemplation to clear brightness. In this short period of time, he had already figured out a lot of things. Since he couldn't guarantee success if he made a move, plus the factor of Han Shiling, he really didn't need to make a move. When Yin Lingxian said this, the atmosphere changed again. Lu Huaiyin and the others were completely relieved. From the looks of it, this crisis had been quietly resolved. Han Shiling's mouth curved into a proud smile, and her eyes, which had always been cold and silent, were now looking at Yin Lingxian with a trace of gentleness and kindness. Yin Lingxian noticed the change in Han Shiling's eyes and felt a burst of joy in his heart. It seemed that his move had made Han Shiling have a better impression of him, which was his biggest gain. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Yin Lingxian with a trace of pity. What a pitiful guy. The reason for Han Shiling's change was undoubtedly that she was happy to have such a performance in front of Di Beichen, but Yin Lingxian attributed the change in Han Shiling to himself. Thinking about it, the next time Yin Lingxian saw Han Shiling would turn hostile again. Seeing that Yin Lingxian had given up, a sinister light flashed in Huang Fu Hui's eyes. He didn't expect that Yin Lingxian was also a guy who fell into the hands of a woman. It was a pity to give up such a great opportunity. Unfortunately, he couldn't change anything by himself. On the contrary, he might even die here. Thinking of this, a smile appeared on the corner of Huang Fu Hui's mouth. Thank you, young Master D and Miss Bailey, for opening this stone door. Why don't we go in? Huang Fu Hui had always changed his attitude very quickly. Even if they were at daggers drawn in the last second, as long as the relationship of interest changed, he could treat it as if nothing had happened and turn hostility into friendship. Looking at the sudden change in Huang Fu Hui, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but open her mouth wide and was secretly speechless. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she would have doubted whether the Huang Fu Hui in front of her was the same person as the one from before. The speed at which she changed her face was amazing. The children of aristocratic families are the children of aristocratic families. This method, I am completely convinced. Xia Jiqing sighed. She felt contempt for Huang Fu Hui, but there was also a trace of fear. It was better to stay away from this guy who was completely good at changing his face. It was really too terrifying. If you made friends with this kind of person, even if you were sold, you wouldn't know what was going on.